Chapter 2649. Because she was thinking about the balance between the main storyline and the side quest, Wei Bai didn't sleep well. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Yu Xiaoyun entered the door. He was wearing a black suit, and his pants were wet. It was the smell of blood. His ankle bone was almost healed, so he didn't need crutches. It was just that the fixed bandage on his ankle was still there. Yu Xiaoyun opened the door. Before he went to the bathroom, he deliberately turned behind the screen to look at the figure on the bed. He only saw the girl's long and thick black hair scattered on the pillow. He didn't order anyone to make an extra room for her. They didn't dare. At first, Yu Xiaoyun wanted to chase her away. If she didn't leave, then it didn't matter if he really sold her. Later, he felt that it was not bad to keep a pet. Now, he felt that he had some pity for her. After all, her love for him and her feelings were like that of a retard. It made him feel a little moved. Perhaps it was because he had been lonely for too long. Even the love of a retard could make his heart beat faster. Yu Xiaoyun thought again, if she wasn't a retard, he wouldn't be so at ease with her. Yu Xiaoyun turned around and went to take a shower. When he came out again, he was clean. He wiped his hair clean and then went to bed expressionlessly. They still slept on the other side, and he slept on the other side. There was a long distance between them. Yu Xiaoyun covered himself with the blanket and waited for a while. Suddenly, he reached out and gently pulled the large blanket to his side. The girl curled up in the blanket frowned and seemed to be starting to feel cold. The blanket was all pulled to his side by Yu Xiaoyun. The outline of the girl's body in silk pajamas was revealed. Yu Xiaoyun's expression was still calm. He crossed his arms and hugged the back of his head. He rested his head on the pillow and waited silently. The temperature in the room was low. Not long after, the sleeping girl naturally rolled over to him. She rubbed against the blanket and reached out to grab it, wanting to crawl under the blanket. She crawled into a warm embrace. Then, she rubbed against the source of the warmth. Her breathing stabilized again, and she continued to sleep. Yu Xiaoyun's expression didn't change at all, as if he knew that she would be like this. Except for when she rubbed against him, his muscles stiffened for a second. He tugged at the blanket and covered her tightly. Then, his fingers naturally hung by her side, and he didn't hug her. Instead, he maintained a natural sleeping posture. It was as if she had hugged him on purpose, and he was just an innocent person being hugged. He had no intention of taking the initiative at all. Yu Xiaoyun closed his eyes and fell into a soft and deep sleep. It was as if with one more person in his arms, the nightmare was far away. After he fell asleep, Wei Bai opened her eyes and stared at him for a long time. Scheming boy. Then she closed her eyes again and went back to sleep. The system and the branch system sat together and watched the show together. The system said, "Get lost. Side quest. I bought a luxurious lobster, abalone, beef, sheep, chicken, duck, and goose hot pot. What if I can't finish it?" Side quest. Oh right, it also comes with 5 kilograms of pork. He suddenly felt that his deep and flawless relationship with the host was on the verge of collapse. Wei Bai's injury was getting better day by day, and the doctor came to check on her every day. Until the last time, the doctor finally announced that as long as she didn't do any strenuous exercise, she would be fine. Yu Xiaoyun, who had already recovered his ankle, couldn't help but smile when he heard the news. The way they got along during this time. It was still quiet. He read while she lay beside the chair in a daze, like a cat. He wiped some Chinese musical instruments, and she curiously helped to hold them. Chapter 2650. After he finished his troublesome work, he would make tea and drink it when he was mentally and physically exhausted. The girl beside him would also sit obediently beside him and drink tea with him. Although every time she drank tea, her brows were always furrowed. Yu Xiaoyun really felt that she was quite good like this. She was as quiet as an antique. He liked a quiet and lonely life. Other than necessary work contact, he almost never interacted with outsiders. If it was another woman, he almost didn't dare to imagine how he would get along with them. Wei Bai was like warm air, letting him experience a life without nightmares and loneliness. But there was no sense of noise. If he didn't occasionally see the girl's blank and dull eyes, he might have continued to cruelly ignore her. She was actually a patient. After a long time, not only did his family know that he had a woman by his side, The people outside also gradually knew. This kind of thing was normal for people in this circle. The abnormal one was Yu Xiaoyan. After all, everyone knew Yu Xiaoyan's monk character. A woman who could make him like must be extremely beautiful. Rumors were everywhere. Yu Xiaoyan ignored them all. However, when the rumors were too exaggerated, Yu Xiaoyan began to feel uncomfortable in his heart. After all, the rumored demoness and the quiet little idiot by his side, they were not the same person at all. For the first time, young Master Yu considered whether to take Wei Wei Bai out for a walk. At a small private banquet, the people who came were all famous and not very noisy. Yu Xiaoyan dressed Wei Wei Bai in a conservative pink cheongsam and put on a string of Hetian jade beads for her. He dressed her up carefully, just like how he dressed up his favorite doll. Then, he brought the confused girl to the small banquet. Because it was her first time, the girl seemed to be a little afraid of meeting people. At the beginning, she had to exchange pleasantries with others for a long time, so Yu Xiaoyan left her in the lounge. He planned to take her out for a walk after the pleasantries and then go back directly. There were servants in the lounge, so he wasn't worried that she would get lost. Seeing that he had left, the girl raised her big timid eyes and looked at him eagerly. Yu Xiaoyan saw the beautiful lines of her body and the exposed slender white wrist with a jasper bead hanging on it. She was too beautiful for his taste. In that instant, it hit his heart and made him regret bringing her out. Young Master Yu lowered his eyes and turned around to flee. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 40. This was the first time Yu Xiaoyan was so impatient in front of others. He dealt with some people perfunctorily. Then, he hurriedly walked back, just as he arrived at the entrance of the lounge. Then, she heard a clear and cheerful male voice. "Your name is Wei Wei? What a nice name. Let me tell you another joke, okay?" Yu Xiaoyan stopped in his tracks. Standing by the door, he couldn't see what the man looked like. However, he happened to see the young girl stretching out her hand to support her chin. Although her eyes were confused, there was a trace of relaxation. She didn't seem to hate the strange man who approached her. Yu Xiaoyan stood silently in the shadows. The young man sounded very happy. "Are you laughing? My joke is very funny, right?" There were all kind of funny stories that young people liked. The young man grasped them well and showed some sincerity. Wei Wei Bai didn't say anything, but there seemed to be a smile in her eyes. Without waiting for the other party to tell another joke, a waiter walked into the lounge and lowered his head to say something to the man. The young man's expression changed, and he immediately got up. "Then I'll leave first. See you next time." The young man walked out of the door and saw Yu Xiaoyan at the door. Yu Xiaoyan's face was indifferent, and his eyes were still gentle, as if he didn't care. He glanced at the man who told the joke. He seemed to be the most powerful film emperor in recent years. He was only 21 years old and had a good family background. When a young film emperor just brushed shoulders with him, Yu Xiaoyan's voice was low and cold. "There won't be a next time." The film emperor's footsteps paused. He felt that the other party's words contained killing intent and immediately ran away. Wei Wei Bai was still sitting quietly in the chair. Suddenly, the light went dark. She looked up strangely. The light seemed to be broken. She was about to get up and leave the darkness in the room. / to facilitate the next reading, you can click on. Chapter 2651. Before she could take a few steps, a hand had already pinched her chin forcefully. The sudden attack made her a little stunned and widened her eyes. Because of the darkness, she couldn't see anything. Only the man's aura was overwhelming, like a robber robbing her of everything, making her unable to breathe. As if she was afraid, she desperately retreated. But the other party was like a cold predator, suppressing her movements in a few steps. The man in the darkness was like a god controlling everything about her. With the gloomy power of punishment, the uncontrollable anger was unusually obvious in his uncontrollable breathing. Wei Wei Bai staggered and sat down in the chair just now. She was frightened by his grip on her shoulder. Like a moth caught by a cruel prey in the dark night, her fragile wings were being dismantled by him. Her fingers grabbed his clothes and wanted to struggle. Her whole body trembled as she shouted, Yu Xiaoyan, save me." His movements paused. The girl under him was already sobbing. "Save me, Yu Xiaoyan." She was so pitiful and weak. Her voice for help made people want to bully her. The man's movements calmed down. His fingers were still tightly clasped around her waist. His fingertips felt the silky texture of the Chong Sam. It was like her skin, but it was a little less warm. He lowered his eyes. In the darkness, his eyes were incomparably deep. The girl trembled nonstop. She was so scared that she couldn't speak. In the past, when others hit her and bullied her, she would only squat and not say a word. But she was so scared when he just touched her a little more roughly. Did he raise her to be delicate? Listening to her whispering his name, asking for help. Yu Xiaoyan finally suppressed all his violent emotions. A kind of secret pity welled up in his heart. It was also like pleasure. After all, she was shouting his name. The man left her trembling body and slowly took a few steps back. Then he turned around and left without hesitation. In the darkness, the girl couldn't see his face. After he left, Wei Bai immediately jumped up from the chair. She wiped the non-existent tears at the corner of her eyes. Then, without hesitation, he rushed out. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he saw Yu Xiaoyan standing there. Under the corridor lights, the man revealed a reserved demeanor in his elegance. His suit was still neat and tidy. His cufflinks were buttoned back, and his disheveled tie was neat and tidy. It was as if the person who had just entered wasn't him. Wei Bai stopped in horror, as if she had been frightened. Yu Xiaoyan looked at her quietly for a few seconds. His thin lips curved slightly, and he smiled gently. His eyes seemed to be filled with stars, and his emotions were as deep as the sea. What's wrong? You haven't seen me for a while, and you miss me so much? The suspicion in Wei Bai's eyes disappeared. Her lips trembled, but she didn't know how to complain. After all, she was used to being bullied. Complaining to others that she had been bullied was too foreign to her. Yu Xiaoyan looked at the young girl who was cowering at the door. Her face was pale, and her round eyes were trembling with fear. She looked at him with longing and fear. He slowly moved forward and placed his hand on the back of her hand. He didn't hold her fingers directly. Instead, he moved his hand up the sleeves of her Chong Sam and finally reached her wrist. The bead bracelet on her wrist was gone. It had fallen off when she was struggling. The sound of the jade beads falling to the ground was really pleasant to hear. His eyes darkened and he whispered, "Don't be afraid. I'm back." Chapter 2652. Just as he finished speaking, Wei Bai pursed her lips as if she had been greatly wronged. She burrowed into his arms, hugged his waist, and cried softly. Broken cries. This was the most outgoing expression she had ever shown to someone she trusted. Yu Xiaoyan stood quietly and let her hug him. It was as if he had never done anything bad. The calm and elegant young master Yu only held her delicate and slender wrist bones. His eyelashes lowered, covering the dark evil in his eyes. He let her cry, and her tears soaked his clothes. It was cold and pitiful. However, he felt that the fire in his chest had already risen, and he could no longer suppress it. He pursed his lips. His thin lips were red. He had always been a man who could not be touched by smoke and fire. But at this moment, it was as if he was possessed. His eyes stared at her black hair. His eyes were seductive and deep. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 45. When they returned, Wei Bai was tired from crying and lay in Yu Xiaoyan's arms. His voice was light and warm. Let's not go out in the future. There are bad people outside. Wei Bai's body stiffened, and she did not know how to respond. She did not say anything, nor did she refuse. Yu Xiaoyan seemed to be doing it for her own good. You should have someone to protect you. In the future, he paused for a moment, and his voice was low and hoarse. It was like a lingering sigh. Let me protect you. Wei Bai lay in his arms for a while before she finally realized something and looked up at him timidly. But she only saw that Yu Xiaoyan's jaw seemed to be a little tense. But in the next moment, he revealed a gentle smile. That pair of unusually deceptive eyes were very beautiful and calm. Wei Bai looked at him for a while, and the tension in her eyes eased. She lowered her head and hugged him even harder. It was as if he was her only guardian and support in this dirty and evil world. And a smile appeared in Yu Xiaoyan's eyes. But that smile was dyed with darkness. It was a paranoid emotion similar to possessiveness. Wei Wei Bai did not see Yu Xiaoyun's expression, but she could guess. He's simply a big wolf, a black-bellied big bad guy. He deliberately bullied me and made me afraid to go out so that he could save the trouble of not bringing me out. Tong Tong, who was eating hot pot with the side quest and bragging about his glorious past, heard the host's voice. He suddenly froze and immediately said anxiously, "Yes, yes, yes. The big wild wolf is a big bad guy. You can't spoil him. He's asking for it." Wei Wei Bai, although the voice was not wrong, why did she hear a guilty conscience? Just as he was about to ask further, the car had already reached home, so she gathered her thoughts and did not let them distract her attention. Tong Smash choked on a mouthful of meat. A hand patted him on the back, and a gentle voice said, "Don't be in such a hurry. Eat slowly. No one is going to snatch it from you." The system looked at him, touched. Then, when he was unprepared, he took the lid of the trash can and smashed it on his head. When he was full, he could defeat more than 10 side missions. This was why he ate hot pot, to show goodwill to his enemies. It was to beat the side quest, not to eat delicious food. After returning, she ran to take a shower. Yu Xiaoyun knew that she could take care of herself in this aspect, and also knew why she was so eager to clean herself up. He did not expose her. Instead, he lay on the chair. His fingers played with the cuffs of his sleeves unhurriedly. It was as if he was sure that she would not come out so quickly. Yu Xiaoyun took out an aquamarine bead from his pocket. It was one of the beads that she dropped. Chapter 2653. He pinched and rolled it with his fingertips. The slightly cold jade was eye-catching. He threw the bead in his hand out, and it fell into the lake outside the balcony. The lotus leaves in the water had already begun to decay. The lotus leaves that were full of handsome lotus leaves seemed to be showing a ferocious and withered side. Yu Xiaoyun watched for a while. He drank too much wine and did bad things, so his mood fluctuated too much. He closed his eyes tiredly. The nightmare came suddenly. He saw himself standing at the door of the resting room at the banquet just now. The young movie king was telling young jokes that he didn't understand to make the girl in the door happy. The lights in the lounge were unusually bright, but the door he stood at was full of darkness. The pure girl lowered her head and listened carefully to the young man's words. She was young and immature. She probably liked those children who didn't even have hair. After all, only young children had those lively common topics to talk about, and he was full of vicissitudes, hypocritical and mature. He wasn't liked by young people at all. Yu Xiaoyun tilted his head and leaned against the door to watch. His dark shadow slowly began to spread from outside the door to inside the door. That black shadow covered everything as it passed by. It drowned the young man with a blurred face. The bright lights in the lounge also began to be swallowed by the darkness. The girl in the room stood up in horror, but found that she was being suppressed by a dark shadow. She covered her mouth in fear, as if she was offended. Then she ran out of the door without hesitation. She crashed into Yu Xiaoyun's arms. The girl raised her face. Her delicate face had a sense of vulnerability that tempted people to sink into it. It was Wei Wei Bai. Yu Xiaoyun thought calmly. As if she had seen her protector, she reached out and hugged him, shouting, "Yu Xiaoyun, save me." Yu Xiaoyun stretched out his fingertips. He lowered his head and kissed her black hair. His fingers tightly clasped her wrist bone, and a dark shadow wrapped around her wrist. Yu Xiaoyun heard his evil and hot voice. "Why do you think I can save you?" He revealed a slightly twisted and unusually evil smile. A dark shadow spread behind the man's slender body. That shadow was Yu Xiaoyun's face. The last ray of light sank into the girl's frightened eyes. It would also be Yu Xiaoyun's last shred of conscience. He was completely pulled into the darkness. Yu Xiaoyun suddenly woke up and reached out to cover his chest. His heart was racing. Then he quickly looked up at the bathroom door. The absurd and twisted dream, the girl's despair of not being able to escape, was still in his mind. It had been a long time since he had a nightmare that reflected his inner emotions so clearly. Compared to the nightmares that made him extremely uncomfortable in the past, this was different. However, this dream made him feel that it was only natural. Even if this dream was abnormally evil, he had no intention of stopping himself from falling. The bathroom door opened. Wei Wei Bai was wearing very conservative pajamas. She was like a kitten whose fur had been drenched by the rain. She opened her pair of wet eyes and reached out to grab her collar in fear. Yu Xiaoyun was still lying on the chair, and the scarlet color in his eyes had yet to fade. Wei Wei Bai was about to come over, but when she saw the look in his eyes, she sensitively took a step back. Although she was stupid, her intuition was very accurate. Yu Xiaoyun even wanted to stop hiding, but when he saw her black hair draped over her body like beautiful silk, his voice was still warm and gentle. "Go to bed early. I'm going to take a shower." Chapter 2654. The doubt in Wei Wei Bai's eyes disappeared, and a bright smile appeared. Then she nodded, turned around, and walked behind the screen. Yu Xiaoyun saw her leave and was silent for more than 10 seconds. Only then did he slowly get up. When he reached the bathroom, he turned on the cold water. His skin was boiling hot. Yu Xiaoyun began to tear off his clothes under the cold water. On his slender white back, his beautiful muscles and collarbone contained an invisible strength. Stripped of the clothes created by modern civilization, young master Yu was like a real hunter at this moment. Terrifying and powerful. His gentle and affectionate eyes were exceptionally clear and sharp even under the ice-cold water. He didn't know how long the water lasted. Only then did he clean up his heat. Yu Xiaoyun, who was wearing silk pajamas, walked out of the bathroom barefoot. Behind the screen, the cat-like figure was already curled up under the blanket. She should be very tired. He took her to a strange place and was frightened and bullied. Her body was extremely weak. He drove back and forth like this. Others might think that it was normal. It was also a heavy burden for her body that had just recovered. Yu Xiaoyun dried his hair himself, not wanting to bring the moisture to bed. Then, he cleaned himself up. The refreshed man calmly went to bed. He was still sleeping on the other side of the bed. When he was about to pull the blanket over, he thought of something and paused. Yu Xiaoyun only hesitated for 3 seconds, and the bottom line in his heart was eaten by impulse. He slowly crawled to the bed and held her in his arms. She was in a deep sleep, and her breathing was almost inaudible. His long, silk-like hair was scattered all over his arms. Her warm and sweet breath touched his skin. It was like a kind of medicine that made his blood boil. Yu Xiaoyun hugged her and wrapped the two of them in the blanket. If she was smart, she would find out. He hugged her on purpose, and she didn't lean over of her own accord. Yu Xiaoyun thought calmly, letting her get used to his changes first. He would reveal his true colors in the future. This way, it shouldn't scare her too much. If she waited until his patience ran out, she still wouldn't be able to accept it. Then, we'll talk about it when the time comes. Yu Xiaoyun thought irresponsibly. He didn't think about what would happen if she didn't accept it. It was as if he knew what the consequences would be if she rejected him. Wei Wei Bai felt that Yu Xiaoyun's wolf thoughts were becoming more and more obvious. In the past, she would accompany him while he cleaned the instruments. Now, he was using the excuse of cleaning the instrument as an excuse to touch her fingers and not let go. In the past, when he was writing calligraphy, she would watch him. Now, he was the one who forced her to hold the brush and learn how to write. Then, he would openly hug her waist and take advantage of her. She thought about how this little bastard had pretended to be so pure and simple. The more abstinent a person was, the more flirtatious he was. Wei Wei Bai was a mentally retarded person, but she couldn't expose him. He could only endure it. The rainstorm at the end of summer came again. After a while, the ground was muddy. Yu Xiaoyun had another idea. He said that the lotus roots in the water were all ripe, so they should go and pluck the lotus roots. I've heard of plucking lotuses, but how do you pluck a lotus root? In the end, Wei Wei Bai saw Yu Xiaoyun drain most of the water, roll up his pants, and bend down to dig for the lotus roots with his hands in the muddy soil. She was speechless. He wasn't pretending to be an elegant young master anymore. Was he going to be an old farmer? Although it was Yu Xiaoyun's bad taste, Wei Wei Bai still took off her shoes and stepped on the mud to help. In the end, the man turned around, grabbed her waist, and carried her to a bench by the water, making her sit obediently. He said, "I'll do it." His flirting really had the smell of soil. Wei Wei Bai's toes were stained with mud. Her white and cute feet were covered with delicate lotus root soil. She held her chin and thought, What if dinner was lotus root stewed with pork ribs? Or lotus root stir-fried with shredded pork? Although Yu Xiaoyan was a vegetarian, he didn't force her to eat with him. That was why she had gained 3 pounds recently. Sideline, how about hot pot? Wei Wei Bai, lotus root doesn't go well with hot pot. Sideline, that's true. Do your feet hurt? Wei Wei Bai finally reacted. Oh, isn't this a sideline? Sideline, small task. Let the male lead bring you water to wash your feet. It's very romantic to wash your feet, isn't it? By Wei Wei. At the /crossover system. Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www. Sashu, download fast, read the full text. 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 Fast. Chapter 2655. The new side quest was to make Yu Xiaoyan bring her water to wash her feet. He had to wash her feet? Wei Wei Bai immediately thought of Yu Xiaoyan wearing servant clothes. He walked with his pitiful little feet, swaying with each step. He was like a little pitiful being oppressed by a landlord. Holding a copper basin of water to wash her feet, she put on blush and smiled flatteringly. Come, master, this servant will wash your feet. This was the so-called career queen line of the side quest, making Yu Xiaoyan become a damn little man to serve her. So the true face of her so-called career line was like this? Wei Wei Bai looked at her feet that were stained with lotus root mud with a strange, sluggish expression. This was the bad thing about the mentally retarded character. She couldn't say it. How could she let Yu Xiaoyan see her intention to wash her feet just by looking at him with longing eyes? It didn't matter in the past. Now, Yu Xiaoyan felt that he was gradually showing the ferocious face of a beast. Did he really think that she was mentally retarded with that little action? She was afraid that her eyes would express too much pity, and in addition to her pitiful temperament. Yu Xiaoyan couldn't take it anymore, and his moral sense collapsed. What if he conspired against her? Conspiring against her was a small matter, but wouldn't it be a loss if she didn't give him any favorability points after that? Wei Wei Bai lowered her head and looked at her feet. Yu Xiaoyan carefully took out a beautiful lotus root from the soil and washed the soil clean. When he looked up, he saw the girl hiding next to the beginning of the decline of the lotus leaves. Her small neck was as white as the whitest lotus root. Her drooping eyelashes made her misty eyes look deep and beautiful. His gaze slowly lowered and saw that her feet were curled up in confusion. Her toes, which were as delicate as jade beads, were as tender as a child's. When they were stained with the delicate mud, they looked even cuter. Yu Xiaoyan held the lotus root and stared at her toes expressionlessly for a long time. Then, as if he couldn't stand it, he reluctantly looked away. The lotus root in his hand was broken by his fingers and fell into the mud. Once a corner of the lotus root was broken and soaked in muddy water, it was inedible. Yu Xiaoyan knew that his mind was restless, so he took the remaining half of the lotus root and walked over. Wei Wei Bai looked up at him in shock. Then, when he saw Yu Xiaoyan, his expression softened. Yu Xiaoyan came to her side, and a gentle smile appeared on his pale and flawless face. Let's go back. His interest seemed to no longer be in those romantic affairs. Writing brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone were listening to the rain with lotus leaves. All the things that had helped him cultivate his body and mind and calm his nerves in the past. Their emotions were churning, and their qi and blood were surging. Because of the child beside him, Wei Wei Bai raised her head slowly. Under the slightly warm sunlight, she saw Yu Xiaoyan smile. As if it was her instinct, she couldn't help but reveal a cute smile. Her smile was filled with trust, making her seem even more pure and childish. Yu Xiaoyan tightened his grip on the lotus root and almost crushed it. He felt that there might be something wrong with him. Seeing her smile like this, a sharp heat surged into his head. Bullying her seemed to have become the darkest thought in his heart. Wei Wei Bai didn't seem to notice his beast-like, dangerous gaze. She moved her feet strangely, wanted to stand up. Yu Xiaoyan reached out and grabbed her arm to help her stand up. Her calves were exposed from the hem of her cheongsam. Her jade-like calves and exquisite ankles were stained with mud. She seemed to be a little uncomfortable. After all, although she was bullied in the Bai family, she was not short of material things. Chapter 2656. She actually liked cleanliness. She also liked to wear shoes, and he preferred her to wear a Chong Sam and walk around his house barefoot. It was as if this could satisfy some unspeakable metaphorical thoughts in his heart. Yu Xiaoyan still held her hand indifferently as they walked back. He didn't show any other enthusiasm at all. When they reached the door, Wei Wei Bai suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her feet were covered in mud, and she didn't want to go in. After all, the house was full of clean carpets and wooden floors. Once she stepped in, it would tarnish this cleanliness. It would be too obvious. Yu Xiaoyan also seemed to have just reacted. He turned around and asked hypocritically, "What's wrong?" Wei Wei Bai lowered her head and didn't say anything, but her eyes kept falling on her feet. Yu Xiaoyan looked down at her feet and stared for a few seconds before he suddenly realized and said, "Are your feet dirty?" Wei Wei Bai immediately raised her head and looked at him with bright eyes. Yu Xiaoyan had already thrown the lotus roots and the like to the bodyguards at home to dig up and wash them. He reached out and carried her in his arms. Then he walked directly into the house. Wei Wei Bai looked at him nervously, as if she was still not used to being so close to him. Yu Xiaoyan was very calm and natural, as if holding her was no different from holding a dog. Wei Wei Bai's nervousness was also affected by him, and her nerves were soothed. He put her on the chair. When Yu Xiaoyan lowered his head, the tip of his nose rubbed against her clean hair. It was slightly cool and had the fragrance of a young girl. He narrowed his eyes and pursed his lips as if he was enjoying something. Then he straightened up and said to her, "I'll go get the bathwater for you. Take a bath and you'll be able to wash your feet clean." Washing feet and taking a bath, although it was essentially washing, but one was washing too much. Did the side quest recognize this? Wei Wei Bai was about to ask when she heard the side quest sneer, "Be a little promising and have some face. Taking a bath will block you in minutes, and you still want to complete the mission. Dream on. Hurry up and press the male lead's head and let him wash your feet. Hurry up and ignite your ambition as the female lead. Don't just eat and wait to die. You're a professional little white flower." Wei Wei Bai. Then she heard the sound of a fly swatter hitting a fly. Then the system said calmly, "What he means is that taking a bath is not the same as washing your feet. If you want to wash your feet, you have to wash your feet properly." Wei Wei Bai, okay, she got it. After listening to this explanation, Wei Wei Bai immediately jumped down from the chair. She remembered that there were antique foot wash basins in this house. Love guard in this damn place. It was built for her by Yanlan's mother. Her mother was an antique enthusiast. Every time Old Master Bai missed the woman he loved, he would collect antiques. No matter what kind of antiques they were, as long as they were expensive. As for that foot-washing basin, it was said that Yang Guifei had washed her feet in it. After listening to this antique story, she was speechless. D*MN. Antique dealers were really going all out to make money. They were even better at bullshitting than those who wrote novels. Wei Wei Bai found a foot-washing basin in a corner. It was quite big. She was worried that Yu Xiaoyan would not understand what she meant, so she immediately got half a basin of foot-washing water from the water under the lotus leaf outside. Then, she slowly and laboriously walked into the room. Even a fool could tell that she wanted to wash her feet and did not want to take a bath. Moreover, she could not hold the foot-washing basin with her small arms and legs. Yu Xiaoyan had to come over and help. If he helped, it would be like carrying the foot-washing basin. Then, she would immediately put her feet into the foot-washing basin and pretend that he had washed her feet. A perfect plan. Sure enough, when Yu Xiaoyan walked out of the bathroom, he saw Wei Wei Bai struggling to hold the foot-washing basin. The water in the basin was about to splash out. For a moment, it was funny that her small body was holding such a clumsy thing. Yu Xiaoyan was stunned for a few seconds before he took a few steps forward and took her foot-washing basin. He looked down at her feet. The mud on her feet had already covered the floor. Only then did Wei Wei Bai realize that she had done something wrong. Her toes curled up, and she lowered her head, not daring to say anything. Yu Xiaoyan smiled and did not care. It was a pity that the bathtub full of hot water in the bathroom was wasted. He put the foot-washing basin beside the chair and waved at her. Come and wash your feet. Wei Wei bye. Half of the side quest is completed. // Chapter 26:57. Then she happily sat on the chair and immediately put her feet into the foot basin. Her feet were originally covered in mud, so they were cleaned in an instant. Yu Xiaoyun's expression changed. His fingers touched the water in the basin. Was it cold? Without thinking much, he held her feet with both hands and pulled them out of the water. The man's face was a little gloomy. You're not in good health. Don't touch cold water. Wei Wei Bai flinched, as if she didn't understand his words. Only then did Yu Xiaoyun realize that his displeasure was too obvious. He valued her too much. As a result, it was a little unbearable for him to lose control of her. Yu Xiaoyun slowly breathed a sigh of relief and suppressed his abnormal possessiveness. He took the foot basin out and splashed the water out. All the bodyguards who were sorting out the lotus roots saw young Master Yu, who had always been elegant, come out with the foot basin. Everyone looked at each other. They felt that the contrast was too great, and they were stunned for a moment. When Yu Xiaoyun returned to the room with the foot basin, a new round of hot rumors began to circulate again. Young Master Yu served the little retard water to wash her feet. Young Master Yu bathed the little retard. Young Master Yu knelt on the keyboard. At home, young Master Yu had no human rights at home. His private money was given to the white vixen, and he was squeezed dry every day. He worked like a cow and ate while kneeling. The rumors made everyone believe. Yu Xiaoyun turned out to be a henpecked man. Yu Xiaoyun didn't expect that when he went out with the foot basin, the group of maids and men at home would have a strange change in the rumor circle. He came in with a heavy foot basin. He saw Wei Wei Bai's feet on the wooden cross under the chair. She lowered her head, and her black hair fell on her shoulders. She was well-behaved, obedient, and clever. Her pink face was exceptionally cute. During this period of hard work, she took care of her. Finally, Wei Wei Bai had a trace of warmth and softness. Bai Wei Wei was counting her toes, and then she was tearing at the side task. You die, I live. Just now, you should be considered finished washing your feet. The watch. Is that washing your feet? Touch your conscience and ask if it hurts. Wei Wei Bai said, I touched and asked. It doesn't hurt. Xiao Biao. He had forgotten that this was a green tea who had no moral integrity and a low moral bottom line. She walked the world by selling her pitiful and vicious image as a little white flower. How could he have a conscience? Wei Wei Bai said, Isn't it just putting your feet into the basin and taking them out after washing them? Don't go back on your word. Xiao Biao. There's a time limit for foot washing. The system came out and whispered, No. Just now the small mission notification popped up. I took a look at his mission list, and it was completed. He's lying to you. Xiao Biao, Wei Wei Bai. The system chewed on the roast duck leg given by the side quest. At this moment, the branch leader suddenly felt his heart ache. Wei Wei Bai was in a good mood after winning against the little bitch. Just as she was about to step off the chair, a pair of pampered and powerful hands held her feet. Wei Wei Bai was stunned. She saw that Yu Xiaoyun had already put the basin beside her. It was full of warm water. He was half-squatting. His palms were white, and there were no traces of work as he held her feet. The man's fingers gently stroked her toes. As if inadvertently, the feathers brushed past her numb. It made Wei Wei Bai's toes tremble. She wanted to escape. However, the man chuckled softly. I'm not going to wash my feet. As he spoke, he nonchalantly placed her feet into the warm water. Chapter 26:58. Although it was comfortable, she didn't want to wash it anymore. Because her mission was completed. Before Wei Wei Bai could think of how to protest, Yu Xiaoyun's voice was extremely low. Wei Wei's feet are dirty. If you don't wash them, they won't look good. His words were a little gentle, but his fingers were gentle as he rubbed her toes. A grown man was squatting down to wash her feet. He didn't put on any airs at all. If she was really retarded, she would believe it. When Yu Xiaoyun deliberately increased his strength again and held the soles of her feet. His fingertips scraped across her skin. When she started to tremble uncontrollably, she finally understood. Was this foot washing? This was a fucking hooligan. Yu Xiaoyun's eyes gradually darkened. His thin lips were pursed tightly, and he could even feel his temples throbbing crazily. He lowered his eyes, and a hint of red appeared on his pale face. His beautiful and slender fingers gently brushed across the watermarks in the warm water. It stirred up ripples in the basin. Wei Weibai looked at him in confusion. She seemed to feel that she couldn't take it anymore and wanted to take her feet out. But when she moved, the strength of the man's fingers was astonishingly great. He pressed her feet into the water and made it impossible for her to move. Don't move. It's not clean yet. Not clean yet. Wei Weibai looked at her feet that were wrinkled from the soaking. The skin was about to go bald. Not clean yet. Yu Xiaoyan looked up. The strong desire to plunder in his eyes made him have a few more traces of fierce desire. He repeated again. As he spoke softly, his thin lips seemed to be stained with blood. You have to wash it clean. Wei Weibai. This didn't seem like he was going to wash her feet. He was going to chop off her feet. Wei Weibai had experienced the most traumatizing foot washing in her life. Her toes were aching faintly, and her skin was pale and wrinkled from the blisters. In the end, she wrapped herself in the blanket aggrievedly and curled up in the corner of the wall, looking at Yu Xiaoyun with dissatisfaction. Yu Xiaoyun, on the other hand, was in a good mood. He got on the bed with a calm and collected attitude. On the contrary, it made Wei Weibai feel wronged and at a loss. Looking at Wei Weibai, who had wrapped herself into a pitiful ball, Yu Xiaoyun seemed to be watching a beautiful scene. Just like that, he occupied one side of the bed and stared at her with his deep and calm eyes. Because his gaze was so focused, Wei Weibai turned her head away in fear. Yu Xiaoyun could only reach out and rub the bridge of his nose helplessly. He knew that his gradual display of aggression had scared her. In such a Wei Weibai, his mind was pure and young. He would feel guilty about doing anything to her. Yu Xiaoyun could only lie on the bed helplessly and convince himself to be patient. After all, Wei Weibai's illness was caused by fear and beatings. This kind of self-isolation was actually different from autism. They were capable of self-growth, self-healing, and self-maturing. During this period of time, Wei Weibai was much smarter than before. She should be considered a few years older. Yu Xiaoyan was even considering whether to hire a psychiatrist for her or something. Thinking of this, he raised his head and looked at Wei Weibai. However, he found that she was already sitting and leaning against the headboard, asleep. Yu Xiaoyan smiled, immediately got up, approached her, and slowly put her on the bed. Then he lowered his head and kissed her eyelashes. It was as if he was kissing his most precious collection. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 50. After getting along with each other for a long time, the favorability was accumulated bit by bit. However, the favorability stopped at 50 and didn't move. Wei Weibai knew that people had different personalities. Read at https://www.sashu. Download Read on the phone. https://m. Sashu. To facilitate your next reading, you can click on the Chapter 2659. A man like Yu Xiaonan was not the kind of person who could get along with his feelings, as long as there was no other stimulation. 50 favorability points was probably the limit. The remaining favorability points had to be brushed up by some other methods. Wei Weibai was wearing a light green cheongsam. She was as beautiful and fresh as a tender leaf in spring. She leaned over the table curiously and watched Yu Xiaoyan holding a piece of warm lotus root starch and a jade token. He was tying tassels. Yu Xiaoyan said in a low voice, "The quality of this jade is not bad. It's a blessed peace token. Take it and play with it." He liked to give her some strange things. Brushes, paintings, jade bracelets or beads, makeup, and flower hairpins. Even the jade token he gave her had to be personally consecrated at the temple before he took it home to design tassels or something. This kind of man was really pretentious to the bone. He made himself look like an immortal. In fact, he was still a hungry wolf in his bones. Wei Weibai had been getting along very well with him during this period of time. so she was not afraid at all. Instead, she looked at the jade token with anticipation, as if she liked his gift very much. Yu Xiaoyan finished tying the pale white tassels and put the jade token into her hand. Tomorrow is your birthday. What gift do you like? Wei Wei Bai was touching the token. It was moist and cool, and it felt first class in the summer temperature. She smiled, as cute as a naive child. But she ignored Yu Xiaoyan's words. Yu Xiaoyan did not care. She had always been like this. She could not say more than a few words a week. The most familiar words were to call his name. Yu Xiaoyan was already satisfied. A few figures suddenly appeared outside the door. It was Chun Shanxi and a few members. Yu Xiaoyan saw them. He put down the remaining tassels in his hand and said to Wei Wei Bai, "I'll leave for a while." Wei Wei Bai looked up at him in a daze. But she found that he had already lowered his head and kissed her cheek. These kisses were very premeditated. At first, it was her hair, then it was probing the side of her ear. Now it was her face. Next time it would probably be her lips. Moreover, he appeared unusually calm and natural, as if it was normal for him to do so. Wei Wei Bai did not expose him. Instead, she looked at him blankly for a moment before lowering her head to play with the jade tablet again. Yu Xiaoyan turned around and left. When his back was facing her, he also heaved a sigh of relief. After all, he had to restrain himself from continuing to kiss her. This was indeed a very difficult thing to do. The recent meetings were all about the most critical projects in the transition period. Only after taking over the Bai family did he realize that although he had inherited a large amount of wealth, it was not enough. He also inherited a lot of trouble. Yu Xiaoyan put in a lot of effort to deal with these troubles. It was also troublesome to manage the wealth. It had to be used precisely for the transformation project. One wrong step, and all would be for naught. Towards the end of the meeting, Yu Xiaoyan's expression did not look good. It was pure exhaustion. He dealt with those trivial but extremely important matters with an expressionless face. He couldn't help but think about how to make Wei Wei Bai happy tomorrow. After all, it was her birthday. She had never celebrated her birthday before. This day was a disaster for the old man of the Bai family. The woman he loved the most had died on this day. Not to mention celebrating Wei Wei Bai's birthday. If he saw Wei Wei Bai on this day, he would have the heart to beat her to death. Yu Xiaoyan thought of her days in the past, and his eyes turned cold. Then he thought of when he was young. He had seen her being abused several times, but he did not stop her at all. Instead, he looked at her from afar, as if it had nothing to do with him. He suddenly regretted being so cold-hearted, even if he had helped her at that time. Full text. Download. To facilitate your next reading, you can click on the Chapter 2660, so that when he thought of her like this, his heart would ache. Wasn't he one of the people who added fuel to the fire when she became like this? The Bai family couldn't raise a pure child. Wei Wei Bai could be considered an accident, but this accident was better not to happen. After all, this place was a dirty pit. If she was too good and pure, she would seem out of place. Sooner or later, she would be destroyed. Fortunately, before she was destroyed, he destroyed the Bai family. He also saved her. Yu Xiaoyan heaved a sigh of relief and finished the last work. Then, he got up and bid farewell to the noisy meeting room. The meeting wasn't over yet, but he planned to bid farewell in advance. One of the most heated discussions at the meeting was the attack on him last time. They still hadn't found out how his whereabouts were leaked. Although everyone felt that they had missed something during the investigation, there was still no real progress. The only progress was that the force that attacked them was completely defeated and destroyed. A few fish might have escaped the net, but it didn't matter. Yu Xiaoyan looked at the scenery in the love garden. Everything here was still the same as before. He liked this place only because he was used to living here. He was like this. Once he was used to something, it was very difficult to change it. For example, when he was used to hating Bai Yanlan, he would be disgusted to the point of vomiting. Even if she used everything together, she wasn't worth his attention. When he was used to scheming to destroy the Bai family, he would spend all his effort to scheme and risk his life. When he was used to living here, he would always live here. It didn't matter if the memories here were a nightmare to him or not. Speaking of nightmares, he seemed to have fewer nightmares recently. Yu Xiaoyan knew that he had already started to get used to the days when he had Wei Wei by. He was used to her existence, used to her eating with him, sleeping with him. She wanted to play with him and have some elegant interests. He was even used to doing some things to her in his dreams, things that belonged to the obsession of a man's demon. Yu Xiaoyan stopped in his tracks. Once this habit was formed, perhaps liking her would become a small habit that couldn't be changed. It was a little dangerous. Yu Xiaoyan examined his feelings and wondered if he should take advantage of the fact that he hadn't really gotten used to it and send her away for a period of time. Otherwise, if it became a true obsession, he might have one more weakness. With Old Master Bai as an example, he was extremely disdainful of the so-called love. If you love a woman, you can indulge everything that woman brings. This was simply insane. All kinds of complicated thoughts were running through his mind, but Yu Xiaoyan still calmly returned to the house. He saw Wei Wei by looking down at the words he had written. Her round eyes were misty, like a curious and confused cat. She tilted her neck and carefully looked at the ink spread out on the table. After looking at it curiously for a while, Wei Wei Bai touched it gently with her fingertips. The young girl was sitting sideways. Her beautiful figure was outlined by the light green cheongsam that was like a leaf. His ink-black hair fell to his waist, shining with a satin luster, pure and beautiful to the extreme. Yu Xiaoyan stood in a daze for a while, before slowly coming back to his senses. He walked over. He had already returned to normal, but he couldn't control his fingers as he gently stroked her hair. The silky touch of her hair passed through his fingers. Yu Xiaoyan's expression was calm. Do you like my words? Wei Wei Bai understood what he meant. Her reaction was a little slow as she nodded. Yu Xiaoyan picked up the brush and said to her, I'll write a few more for you. Is there anything you like? Wei Wei Bai lowered her eyes and didn't say anything. She seemed to be thinking, but also seemed to be in a daze. Just when Yu Xiaoyan thought that she wouldn't open her mouth like before, she said, Yu Xiaoyan. Yu Xiaoyan paused for a moment before he reacted. However, he heard the young girl's figure with a hint of stubbornness. I like it, Yu Xiaoyan. Yu Xiaoyan felt that his heart was beating uncontrollably like a drum. He pursed his lips and turned his face away. His breathing was heavy and hot. The brush in his hand even trembled a little. Yu Xiaoyan calmed down his reaction and quickly wrote his name on the white paper. The dragon and phoenix dance was a little rushed. After he finished writing, he said, Do you like it? In fact, he didn't expect her to understand the double entendre of his question. The next second, the young girl had already leaned over and gently kissed him on the cheek. Then, before he could react, she had already turned around and jogged behind the screen. She carefully grabbed the edge of the screen with both hands and secretly peeked out her eyes to look at him. She was like a cat that had done something bad, pitiful and cute, with a hint of stubbornness. Yu Xiaoyan blinked and then couldn't help but touch his cheek. Then, he turned around and saw the small figure behind the screen. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up into a smile. Perhaps it wouldn't be bad to have a little habit of liking her existence. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 55. The download address is at https://www.sashu.com. Chapter 2661. Everything in the Bai family had slowly disappeared. The distribution of benefits and the restarted projects were all transferred to Yu Xiaoyan's resources at a slow but safe speed. His style of doing things was like his person, warm and steady, except for the ruthlessness and violence when he took down the Bai family. For the rest of the time, one couldn't see how anxious his personality was. Wei Wei Bai didn't care about Yu Xiaoyan's career at all. What she paid attention to was the main storyline strategy. After all, the main storyline mission's favorability rose too slowly. The favorability was like a turtle's speed. Since the last time her luck rose to 55, it had been almost a month. The favorability stopped at 60. The reason why she came to 60 was that Yu Xiaoyan had started to kiss and hug her regardless of the occasion or time. Just like his style of doing things was gentle. When he wanted a girl, he would take his time. Step by step, he used his own rhythm to erode her. If she was really a retard, she would really think that his attitude was very natural and his kisses were very pure. She would never think of that. Moreover, there was a psychiatrist recently. She was a woman from abroad. She was in her 30s and was an authoritative expert in psychology. She was also blonde and had a hot body. Wei Bai didn't dare to be arrogant in front of such an expert. It was very hard for her to pretend. After all, a psychiatrist was different from Yu Xiaoyan. Although Yu Xiaoyan was smart and had good observation skills, his main job wasn't to keep an eye on her. She could slack off or sneer a few times. Yu Xiaoyan was busy with his career, so he definitely didn't have time to care about her. It was time for her to get off work as well. She wanted to have some fun and relax her expression. But ever since the psychiatrist came, she had been pretending for 24 hours a day. After all, the psychiatrist's job was to keep an eye on you all the time. Wei Bai said, "I'm dog-tired." The blonde beauty had a kind expression on her face. She played and drew with her as if she was chatting. Wei Bai held a brush and drew the ink painting that Yu Xiaoyan had taught her. Of course, Yu Xiaoyan was drawing a real ink painting. She painted graffiti. The psychiatrist's name was Mina, and she was of mixed Chinese and English descent. Her facial features were more English, but they were soft and pleasing to the eye. Wei Bai didn't have any objections to her and looked at the information. She found out that she was Yu Xiaoyun's university classmate. They were both straight-A students. Although they didn't talk much, they could still call each other senior sister and junior brother. As a conscientious retard, Wei Bai ignored everything and kept her ears shut. Anyway, other than Yu Xiaoyan, she didn't say a word. Therefore, no matter what Mina asked her, she would only gently raise her eyes and stare at her with those pure, innocent, beautiful, and ignorant eyes. He stared at the beautiful psychiatrist until she felt embarrassed. Then, he lowered his head and continued to scribble. Mina wasn't embarrassed, nor was she angry. Instead, she felt that this was normal. She began to analyze Wei Bai's drawing. It was very suitable for a mentally handicapped person. It was just that he couldn't see any valuable emotions at all. During this period of time, Wei Bai had been very cooperative with the psychiatrist's game. There was never any confrontation, but it was only cooperation. There was nothing else. After so many days, the treatment effect was abnormally bad. Mina felt that the treatment effect was so bad that it was an insult to her brilliant career as a psychiatrist. She looked at Wei Bai, who had her head lowered and was scribbling with a brush. The girl was exceptionally delicate and beautiful. Her pink skin, black silk-like hair, and thick ink-like beauty made people unable to help but be subdued at a glance. Quick transmigration system. Male god, come here. Chapter 2662. Given her age, many girls of this age could enchant others just by looking at their bare faces. Not to mention Wei Bai's appearance. When Mina saw her for the first time, she still had a feeling. A delicate canary that did not belong to the human world, fragile and beautiful. Just looking at it made her want to destroy it. She could even keenly sense the change in Yu Xiaoyan. His abnormal and crazy possessiveness towards a girl in front of him was getting out of control. Mina stared blankly at Wei Bai for a while, then suddenly reached out and touched the back of her hand. Bai Wei seemed a little strange as she raised her head. Her pure and innocent eyes stared straight at her, although she knew that she did not know anything. But for a moment, Mina even felt that her thoughts were seen through by the girl. This made her fingers tighten a little. Her nails almost dug into the back of her hand. Wei Bai's fingers trembled, and a trace of moisture appeared in her eyes. Mina reacted and immediately retracted her hand. She said with a smile, "Let me see what Xiao Wei drew." After saying that, she took her drawing and studied it. But she did not mention the red mark on the back of the girl's hand. Wei Bai held the pen and sat on the chair obediently, as if she did not feel pain. The system said, "Be careful of her. She's Yu Xiaoyan's fanatic fan." Wei Bai said indifferently, "It's okay. Her current treatment plan is normal." When she came, Wei Bai and the system had already gone through the information. The big sister in front of her had been secretly in love with Yu Xiaoyan for 10 years. But Yu Xiaoyan was like a block of ice, looking at everyone as if they were dead. Plus, at that time, there was a blatant fanatic fan like Bai Yanlan. So, It made Mina, who was secretly in love with him, inconspicuous. Even Yu Xiaoyan did not realize that this woman was secretly in love with him. After all, it was very easy for a psychologist to hide their emotions. Over the years, Mina had made achievements in her field. So, Yu Xiaoyan wanted to find a psychologist, which was why he found her. Most psychiatrists were men, and it was difficult to find a woman whom he knew well. This was also the reason why Yu Xiaoyan chose Mina. For Yu Xiaoyan, it was already unbearable for others to get close to Wei Wei Bai. If the other party was still a man, then he would not be able to suppress his jealousy. Moreover, Yu Xiaoyan had a dark guess in his heart. Wei Wei Bai was too eye-catching. Moreover, her temperament was too special. At first, he thought that he was a psychopath who wanted to bully her every time he saw her. The strange, destructive longing for her, morbid to the point of trembling. Later on, she realized that everyone more or less had the desire to destroy her. He even had the thought of ravaging her, only because she was his now. Only then did the covetous gazes lessen. This made Yu Xiaoyan almost unable to tolerate this kind of thing. He wished that he could keep her in the house. Try not to meet them as much as possible to avoid being remembered by others. Her appearance and temperament were too dangerous. This was also the reason why Yu Xiaoyan could not let other men get close to her. Who knew if those men would be attracted to her? And Mina was obviously a better choice. Mina glanced at the picture that was scribbled on and finally gave up analyzing the picture. Wei Wei Bai's heart seemed to be blank. There was almost no emotion worth studying. The tepid treatment plan did not have any effect on her at all. Slash. Chapter 2663. If it weren't for the fact that Wei Wei Bai was like this, she would have suspected that she wasn't a normal person. She just liked to be in a daze. Mina revealed a gentle smile and wanted to hold Wei Wei Bai's hand again. However, Wei Wei Bai wasn't as indifferent as before this time. Her fingers trembled, and she couldn't wait to retract them. The man who had just walked in happened to see the scene of her retracting her hand. Only then did Mina realize that Yu Xiaoyan had come in. She didn't show any expression on her face and just calmly retracted her hand. "Mr. Yu, you're back." Yu Xiaoyan nodded indifferently, then walked directly to the chair and reached out to carry Wei Wei Bai. The girl in a lavender cheongsam was easily carried into his arms. The girl, who looked like an exquisite jade doll just now, blushed slightly. The faint crimson color was like a rose, gorgeous and shy. Yu Xiaoyan said to Mina, "It's time for today's treatment." Mina didn't hesitate at all. She picked up her briefcase and immediately got up to leave. When she walked to the door, she turned her head to take a look before she left. She saw that the calm elegance in the eyes of the always cold, ascetic, elegant, and beautiful young master Yu had disappeared. He was like a hunter who had waited for a long time and lost his patience. He held the girl's face with both hands and even lowered his head impatiently. He didn't care at all about how weak the other party's mind was. If it weren't for the fact that the girl had just become an adult, this kind of behavior was already a crime. Mina turned around and pinched her palm hard with her fingers. Then, she left without saying a word. On Yu Xiaoyun's side, when his fingertips touched the back of the girl's hand, he found a red mark on the back of his hand. It was like a fingernail mark. Such a faint mark shouldn't have been discovered. However, Wei Wei Bai's skin was too delicate, and any trace of a mark could be magnified. Yu Xiaoyan frowned, and a thought flashed through his mind. As if casually, he asked in a low voice, "Does the back of your hand hurt? What made it?" Wei Wei Bai looked at him blankly. Her face turned even redder, but she didn't answer. He didn't see anything wrong with her expression and wondered if he was making a mountain out of a molehill. Yu Xiaoyan touched her lips with his finger and said in a low voice, "It's okay. If you don't like her, remember to tell me." The psychiatrist could be changed. In fact, it was good that she was always like this. Yu Xiaoyan didn't want to face the growing despicable darkness in his heart. He lowered his head, and his fingers came to her delicate neck. The sunlight shone into the wooden table, elongating their shadows, until they fused together and became inseparable. The room was filled with the smell of ink. Occasionally, the sweet and soft voice of a young girl could be heard. There were also men who slowly and dangerously comforted her. Mina decided to pass her treatment plan to Yu Xiaoyan. Her condition is more serious, and she needs more in-depth intervention. I need some more intense methods. Yu Xiaoyan had just returned from work and was sitting in an armchair with his hands folded on his knees. His attitude was indifferent, and his movements were graceful and slow as he flipped through the booklet of proposals. Yu Xiaoyan looked at the detailed proposals and knew that for a mental patient, this kind of proposal would indeed be effective. However, the process was to dig up the pain in Wei Wei Bai's heart. One of the desensitization treatments was to let her feel as much of the damage she had suffered as possible. Yu Xiaoyan casually took a pen from his suit pocket and began to cross out some treatments that were very effective, but he didn't allow them to appear on Wei Wei Bai. /T. Chapter 2664. Mina's face darkened when she saw his actions. Every plan was the painstaking work of a psychiatrist. It might cause this plan to fail at the last moment. Yu Xiaoyan finally threw the plan back to Mina. You can increase the treatment, but you can't make her unhappy. Yu Xiaoyan's last sentence was heavy and fierce. For the first time, a calm and elegant expression appeared on his fair face. It was a stern warning, and even his calm eyes were filled with hostility. Mina's body stiffened and immediately showed a forced smile. Of course, Mr. Yu. Yu Xiaoyan reached out to support himself on the armrest and stood up indifferently. A mature man, even if his face still looked unusually young, like a 17-year-old schoolboy. However, the elegance and steadiness of his every move, which had been settled by time, was not something that any young boy could compare to. He left with his back to Mina. His footsteps were even a little hurried. Mina knew that he was going to see that girl. With a simple analysis of Yu Xiaoyan's mentality and behavior, one could see his infatuation with that girl. In fact, he never hid it. Mina stood for a long time. Looking at the messy plan in her hand, she slowly smiled. In fact, it didn't matter if this plan could be given out or not. All she wanted was more time. Wei Wei Bai found that the treatment plan was wrong. After sending Yu Xiaoyan away, it was troublesome enough to deal with Mina. In the end, she found that this big sister had actually tampered with the treatment plan. On the surface, it was to let her recall her experience of being beaten so that she would get used to it and walk out of it. But what Mina did was to hypnotize her. If it weren't for the system raising her salary, she would have ignored the other party's repeated hints. Hints and hypnosis could kill a person, especially a person with mental problems. And what Mina did was to slowly fill her heart with the most tragic experiences she had gone through in bits and pieces. Then, it worsened and deepened her condition, coupled with the occasional hint of suicide. This was complete. A one-stop service to send her to the West to destroy her psychological state was formed. This plan was very similar to desensitization treatment. That was why he could hide it from Yu Xiaoyan. If Bai Weiwei was the original owner, it was estimated that within a few months, she would have to accept the psychological suggestion to jump off a building. This bitch Mina, she pretended to be so calm and magnanimous, killing without blinking and leaving no traces behind. Unfortunately, Wei Wei Bai said that she didn't feel any pain from the original owner's experience. Therefore, she only felt annoyed by all the hints and hypnosis. Moreover, if the treatment didn't work after a long time, she wouldn't commit suicide. She reckoned that Mina, who was Yu Xiaoyan's fanatic crush, would think of other ways to kill her. He had seen too many perverts. Mina was considered a little pervert, but she was so perverted that she had no standards. Wei Wei Bai said to the system, "Find a chance to get rid of this fake doctor." The system was about to nod. Side quest. Hee. Wei Wei Bai and the system were confused. Side quest. Do you miss me? Bai Weiwei and the system both lazily shook their heads. Their faces were expressionless, indifferent, and light. Their hearts were like dead ashes. Side quest. Small task. Please personally help your cute psychiatrist to steal the male lead's recent confidential documents for the Hainan Airlines project. After saying that, the side quest showed a sinister smile. Personally hand the confidential documents to your psychiatrist, Mina. She had personally emphasized this to Mina. Wei Wei Bai couldn't take advantage of any loopholes. This mission, in fact, had never appeared as suddenly as it did now. Wei Wei Bai was just about to deal with Mina, but the side quest rolled out, asking her to help the other party complete some stupid spy task. Wei Wei Bai thought for a long time. Finally, she sighed. Yu Xiaoyan doesn't have it easy. Even the person who has a crush on him is scheming against his assets. What a pitiful girl. She would let him kiss her a few more times at night. Then she wouldn't find him annoying. Chapter 2665. It was already 1 o'clock in the morning when Yu Xiaoyan finished the meeting. He hung up the remote conference call. He reached out and rubbed the bridge of his nose tiredly. There were red streaks in his beautiful eyes. Chun Shan followed a few people to organize the Hainan Airlines project information. This was the biggest project after the transformation. It was also the foundation of their future foothold. If they were still like before, swallowing all the dark enterprises, then of course, they would still be in a terrifying and unshakable position. But if he started to deal with the dark enterprises, then he would lose a lot of wealth. More importantly, their status in the underworld was more important. This kind of self-harming transformation was what many people wanted to do. But they didn't dare to do it. Once their status was shaken, it meant that there would be more assassinations, more attacks, and more enemies watching them. This was the time when they had the most weaknesses. They wouldn't kill you at this time. Then, when the transformation was successful, then Yu Xiaoyan would be an unshakable behemoth in the dark world. Because he would rationalize all his wealth openly, it would be difficult to touch him in the future. Chun Shan put a few sorted Hainan Airlines documents on Yu Xiaoyan's table. Yu Xiaoyan casually stretched out his finger, indicating that they could leave. Everyone left respectfully. Yu Xiaoyan put a few documents into the safe. Then, like all ordinary office workers, he finally got off work. He could rest. Yu Xiaoyan heaved a sigh of relief and casually took off his suit jacket, revealing the white shirt inside. Then, a man with a beautiful face and an unhurried elegance walked out of the study. When he returned to the room, the moonlight had already scattered all over the floor. Behind the screen, on the big bed, Yu Xiaoyan took a look and saw that small figure curled up under the blanket, sleeping soundly. His pursed lips relaxed a little, and he couldn't help but curl his lips into a smile. Then, he turned around and went to take a shower. The man with a clean and fresh smell went to bed quietly. Naturally, he reached out his arm and pulled her into his embrace. The girl's warm and soft body was nestled in his embrace obediently. Yu Xiaoyan hadn't had a nightmare for a long time. It was as if all the darkness and loneliness, as well as the terrifying and cold world in the dream, had left him with one more person in his arms. He lowered his head and rubbed his chin against her soft and silky hair. The girl seemed to have sensed something. Her eyelashes trembled, but she didn't wake up. Instead, she naturally moved her body closer to him. Her hand casually rested on his shoulder, as if she wanted to hold on to something. Yu Xiaoyan didn't think too much about it. He reached out and gently held her fingers. Just as he was about to close his eyes, he saw something from the corner of his eye. The dim yellow bedside lamp, coupled with the moonlight, was too bright. The wound on her wrist was clearly visible. It was a bite mark. There were clear teeth marks that resembled self-mutilation. Yu Xiaoyan's pupils shrank and his breathing stopped. He stared at the teeth marks on her wrist. Then, she checked again and again to make sure that she had bitten herself. Because whether it was the bite marks or the location, they were all bitten by her. Yu Xiaoyan's originally gentle and affectionate expression was replaced by a dark and fierce anger. What was going on? His trembling body from anger seemed to have been discovered by the girl. She furrowed her brows and opened her eyes in a daze. Her eyes were misty. He wanted to ask her why she hurt herself, but the words were forcefully stuck in his throat. Only then did Yu Xiaoyan realize that her mind was too immature. Chapter 2666. If he really questioned her, she might not know how to answer. And besides the teeth marks, did she have other wounds on her body? Yu Xiaoyan suddenly remembered that he saw her interacting with Mina earlier. Mina seemed to want to hold her hand, but she quickly dodged with vigilance in her eyes. She was like a small animal that had been hurt. He had been vigilant in his heart at that time. He had also deliberately checked the girl's body and did not find any external injuries, except for the faint red marks on the back of her hand. Wei Wei Bai looked at Yu Xiaoyan in confusion, as if she did not understand what was wrong with him. When she saw his gloomy face, her eyelashes trembled and she instinctively wanted to leave him. However, Yu Xiaoyan grabbed her wrist and flipped her over, supporting her ear with one hand. His black hair hung down, and his usually affectionate and beautiful eyes were now filled with a deep coldness. Like a lonely wolf, he removed his gentle and hypocritical mask, revealing a few traces of sharp viciousness. Wei Wei Bai shrunk under his body and looked at him in confusion. The man's breath and breath were unusually aggressive, especially his body temperature. It was extremely hot. It almost burned her. Wei Wei Bai's ignorant and panicked eyes finally made the dangerous man on top of her a little more rational. Yu Xiaoyan took a deep breath and pressed her wrist to his lips. The force of his tongue licking was a little like biting. When his force came to her teeth marks, it even brought another kind of pain to the wound. Wei Wei Bai's cheek had a red mark because of her deep sleep. At this moment, she was even more excited by his actions, and her face was flushed. She retracted her hand and tried to stop him. However, the piercing pain from her wrist made her fingertips tremble, but she could not break free. Behind her wrist, the man's eyes were dark and vicious. His low voice was like a warning, but it was filled with worry and gentleness. In the future, you're not allowed to bite yourself. Wei Wei Bai's face was flushed. She looked at him with misty eyes with a puzzled expression. However, Yu Xiaoyan didn't allow her to escape. He said word by word, "It's wrong for you to bite yourself. You're not allowed to do that in the future." It was obvious that she had bitten herself. Yu Xiaoyan knew that there was probably something wrong with her emotions that caused her to have the tendency to self-harm. After all, in her previous information, there was a tendency to self-harm. But ever since she had been with him, he had never found any inclination in her, so he was relieved. Who would have thought that she would start to harm herself again? He had clearly started to hire a psychiatrist to treat him. Why was it getting worse instead of getting better? Yu Xiaoyan thought of the recent treatment plan. Was it too radical? But he had clearly crossed out all the plans that would excite her too much. What triggered her to have self-destructive tendencies again? Yu Xiaoyan felt a dull pain in his chest, and he was irritated. But he couldn't bear to scare her. He didn't even dare to ask her why she started hurting herself. He was afraid that when she recalled the past, she would become even more isolated and miserable. Wei Wei Bai couldn't snatch her hand back, and she didn't understand his words. She stared at him with her round eyes, which were like washed obsidian. Because of her anger, there was a lively clarity. Suddenly, she knocked her forehead against his chest. A thud came from Yu Xiaoyan's chest. He groaned. Wei Wei Bai immediately didn't dare to move. Her furry head was buried in his chest, and her body was stiff like a frightened little animal. Slash. Chapter 2667. She was afraid that she would cause him problems. Yu Xiaoyan felt angry and uncomfortable, but his heart was warm. This messy intertwining of emotions made his expression complicated for a moment. He sighed and let go of her hand. Wei Wei Bai immediately retracted her fingers and hit her hand. Yu Xiaoyan didn't let her go. Instead, he ran his fingers through her long hair, and the smooth hair slipped through his fingertips. His voice was hoarse and dangerous. "You're mine." This sentence was soft and paranoid. The man lost a layer of elegance and calmness, revealing a childish and domineering side. "You can't bite my person." Wei Wei Bai. Why do these words sound so difficult to understand? "You're mine. You can't bite my person." Did he mean that she couldn't bite him? Yu Xiaoyan's lips and teeth were close to her skin, and he finally emphasized each word. "If someone has to bite, it can only be me." Bai Weiwei stared at him with big, confused eyes, motionless. She seemed to be unable to understand his words, but also seemed to be struggling to think about what he meant. Yu Xiaoyan felt that his warning didn't seem to have any good effect. Although he didn't find any other wounds, Yu Xiaoyan was still very concerned about Wei Wei Bai's self-harm. Mina heard Wei Wei Bai's self-harm, but her face was calm. Mr. You have to believe in my professionalism. Miss Bai should be at a critical moment. A little self-harm in exchange for her sobriety is worth it. Yu Xiaoyan was looking through Na's treatment plan. His beautiful eyes were half closed. Even the shape of his eyes was so gentle. At this moment, they were as cold as ice. Na was still confidently talking about the effect of the treatment plan. Suddenly, a cold and calm voice sounded. You can leave now. I'll get someone to transfer the contract liquidated damages to you. Leave within a week. After speaking, Yu Xiaoyan slowly threw the treatment plan on the table. He crossed his hands on the table and looked up at Na coldly. I don't care if she's sober or not, but if she starts to self-harm, I won't allow it. Mina was a little anxious. She pinched her palm with her fingers and tried to argue. She was too severely injured, so she sealed herself off. Don't you want her to fully recover? Yu Xiaoyun's incomparably affectionate eyes were now calm and indifferent. You've said too much nonsense. Mina could see that Yu Xiaoyun was serious. She could even see the dark and paranoid emotions in his eyes. Suddenly, Mina understood. Her lips trembled as she said, Don't you want her to get better? Yu Xiaoyan looked at her indifferently, but he did not refute. Mina's tone was a little bewildered. You're sick too, Yu Xiaoyan. Your possessiveness is abnormal. If you really like her, shouldn't you help her get better? Yu Xiaoyan said calmly. You know that I'm indeed sick. In this day and age, people pay attention to matching social status. It's good that both of us are sick, so we can't dislike each other. This reason shocked Mina. Then why did you hire me? Yu Xiaoyan looked at her calmly and said indifferently, You're wrong. I do want to cure Wei Wei, but you don't have the ability. / Chapter 2668. Mina emphasized, I have the ability. Yu Xiaoyan didn't listen to her and reached out to send her away. Mina didn't expect to lose so inexplicably this time. Even her suggestion and hypnosis hadn't penetrated Wei Wei Bai's mind yet. She was chased away by Yu Xiaoyan. Just because Wei Wei Bai bit her? With Wei Wei Bai's illness, it would be abnormal if she didn't harm herself. What did it have to do with her treatment? Moreover, her hypnosis didn't instruct her to harm herself at all. Suddenly, an idea flashed through Mina's mind. All kinds of almost emotionless graffiti seemed to be premeditated self-harm. There was also the feeling of disharmony that Bai Wei Wei usually showed. It was all like pretending to be sick. Mina's breathing quickened. She looked at Yu Xiaoyun, whose eyes were incomparably cold, and didn't say anything. She just lowered her head, turned around, and left. She didn't immediately pack her luggage. Instead, she took advantage of the time when Yu Xiaoyun wasn't aware to find Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai was lying by the window, looking at birds. The warm late summer sun fell on the girl's breathtakingly beautiful face. The light purple Cheongsam was like a delicate and noble flower. The young girl raised her head, and around her pure, white neck hung a jade green peach. On the wrist that reached out to play with the birds in the birdcage on her head, there was also a priceless jade bracelet of the same color. Yu Xiaoyan treated her as his most precious antique doll. All the treasures in his collection were used to decorate her, and the girl was completely indifferent to these. Mina hid at the side and stared at her, trying to observe for evidence that she was pretending to be sick. But Wei Wei Bai just stared at the birds in a daze. After poking the birds with her fingers, she retracted them and didn't do anything else. If she was faking it, it was too similar. Mina thought of something and took out her pocket watch for hypnosis. She never used this usually. It was too obvious. She used words to hint at Wei Wei Bai. Mina silently walked behind Wei Wei Bai, her voice soft and gentle. Wei Wei, you're tired. It's time to sleep. A trace of confusion appeared in Bai Wei Wei's eyes. A pocket watch landed in front of her eyes. Mina stood beside her, her pocket watch shaking slowly. Tell me, are you not sick? Wei Wei Bai didn't say anything and just stared at the pocket watch. Mina patiently continued to hypnotize him. You're not sick. She was using an interrogative tone. As long as Wei Wei Bai was hypnotized, she would be able to get the truth out of her. Wei Wei Bai did not answer and continued to remain silent. Mina knew that she didn't have much time left, so she was a little anxious and kept repeating herself. You're not sick, you're not sick. Wei Wei Bai, she wasn't sick. Who would be willing to admit that they were? What was wrong with this girl's brain? Mina's fingers suddenly froze, and her pocket watch trembled. The girl that she hypnotized suddenly closed her eyes. Was she asleep? She pulled the chain of the pocket watch hard, wanting to wake her up, but she remembered that Yu Xiaoyun would be back soon. Mina could only stomp her feet. She had something more important to do. Hypnotizing Wei Wei Bai was secondary. She would think about it later. This time, she needed to stop the Hainan Airlines project and prevent Yu Xiaoyun from successfully transforming. This would be of great benefit to her family. When Yu Xiaoyun's project ran aground and failed, he would be hit hard. She would appear and let Yu Xiaoyun marry her, and then get him. This was the plan from the beginning. As for making Wei Wei Bai commit suicide, it was just a temporary idea. After all, Yu Xiaoyun would be her husband in the future. And if her husband had such a little lover by his side, how could she tolerate it? Transmigration system. Adonis, come here. Transmigration system. Adonis, come here. Chapter 2669. Mina turned around and left in a hurry, planning to do it tonight. After she left, Wei Wei Bai still maintained her sleeping posture. Not long after, a hand gently stroked her long hair. Yu Xiaoyun's pleasant voice sounded softly. Wei Wei, why are you sleeping here? You'll catch a cold. Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes trembled, and she opened her eyes in confusion, as if she didn't know why she fell asleep. When she saw Yu Xiaoyun, a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. Then she reached out, hugged his neck, and snuggled into his arms. She whispered gently, Yu Xiaoyun, hug me. These words were too clear, and they were too in line with her current age. The delicate feeling of a young girl was undeniable. He had once thought that if Wei Wei Bai wasn't sick, she would probably look like this. But she was sick. Her mental age was many years younger. This wasn't something she would say. Thinking of the scene he saw on the surveillance camera just now, Yu Xiaoyun gently hugged her and didn't say anything. Hypnosis, suggestion, and implantation of consciousness. They were all key abilities to destroy or heal a person. Mina was indeed very capable. He saw her holding a pocket watch and hypnotizing Wei Wei Bai, saying that she wasn't sick. It was as if she was controlling the girl, making her into a seemingly normal puppet. This was a relatively powerful hypnosis skill, but this skill couldn't be maintained for long. And this wasn't a treatment. It was more like controlling someone and making that person into the ideal state of hypnosis. As long as the hypnosis was broken, it would lose its effect. Could it be that he wanted to drive her away? So Mina came to hypnotize Wei Wei Bai? Making her look normal meant that the treatment plan was good, so she could stay. Yu Xiaoyun's movements were extremely gentle as he stroked Wei Wei Bai's hair, but his eyes were sinister. No matter what Mina's purpose was, her hypnosis, suggestion, and manipulation of Wei Wei Bai had already crossed his bottom line. The girl didn't seem to notice that she was abnormal. She leaned her head comfortably on Yu Xiaoyun's shoulder, her breath gently blowing on the man's neck. The soft girl said sweetly, Yu Xiaoyun, I hate it when you have other women around you. Yu Xiaoyun stopped stroking her hair. Although he knew that she was being hypnotized, that was why she was so normal. But her words still made him a little stiff. He was like a little man who was suspected of cheating by his girlfriend. He explained in a low voice, That's the psychiatrist I found for you, not the woman around me. Wei Wei Bai pushed him away in a fit of pique. She jumped off the chair in a huff. Because she walked quickly, her fair calves were faintly discernible under the cheongsam. You're lying. You like that woman. Otherwise, why would she bother me every day? After saying that, she came to the screen. The young girl turned her head, crossed her arms in front of her chest, and said fiercely, Remember this, you are mine, Yu Xiaoyun. Yu Xiaoyun stood by the window and looked at her in a daze. Looking at her angry appearance, she was charming and passionate. She was like a rose with thorns. The mist in her eyes disappeared without a trace, and only her lively anger and cuteness remained. She stomped her feet, and her beautiful purple cheongsam shook. Do you understand? Yu Xiaoyun was silent for a while, and couldn't help but smile. His thin lips were slightly pursed. Yes, I am yours. Although he knew that it was the effect of hypnosis that made her temporarily better. In the past, he even worried that he just liked her closed-off appearance. Pure and childish, it never hurt him. Only then did he open his heart to like her and think that she was good. But when she angrily asked him to like her and belong to her with a coquettish face, the hole in his chest that had been there for many years was instantly filled. Every frown and smile was good. Being closed off and normal was beautiful. Yu Xiaoyan only felt that his heart was beating fast in his chest. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 65. Yu Xiaoyan suddenly felt that maybe he could change the psychiatrist. Let her really get better. If she was so cute when she got better, he could even overcome his twisted possessiveness. Let her be angry at him so normally. / to facilitate your next reading, you can click on the comma. Chapter 2670. The effect of the hypnosis was better. Wei Weibai still looked normal after dinner. Yu Xiaoyan felt that it was fresh, but he was more relieved, because he was sure that his preferences for her did not change with her attitude. It was more like because she was Wei Weibai, so no matter what she looked like, as long as she was her, it was fine. Bai Weiwei held a bowl of sweet red bean soup and drank it. I like sweet things, and I like to eat meat. I don't eat bean sprouts or tofu. Remember this. Yu Xiaoyun held a pen with his slender fingers and slowly wrote in beautiful handwriting on the booklet. Okay, I'll remember it. Wei Weibai glanced at him with her beautiful eyes. Her red lips curled up as she muttered, "You too. You're not allowed to eat vegetables all the time. It's normal to eat more meat. People who are vegetarian are not in good health. I'm not like you who have short life." Yu Xiaoyun's pen paused, as if he was helpless. He seemed to be hesitating whether to write this down as well. She had been a vegetarian for too long and couldn't smell meat. The reason why meat dishes could be served was because she couldn't eat vegetables. Wei Weibai knocked the spoon on the side of the bowl and raised her eyebrows. "I told you not to have a short life, but you're still frowning. Are you angry?" Yu Xiaoyan looked at the snow-white porcelain spoon on the girl's fingertips. Her pale pink nails were like thin cherry blossoms. When he first raised her, she was like an abandoned kitten. Her hair was messy, and she was thin and pale. She was so fragile that she could disappear at any time. Now he could see the color on her face, lips, and nails. It was all because of her delicate nature. Just like her temper, she ordered him around so delicately. He couldn't wait to kick his chest to make him listen to her. It was really cute. Yu Xiaoyan lowered his eyes unhurriedly. He couldn't help but bite his lower lip with his teeth to suppress the hot thoughts. The handwriting under the tip of his nose was also a little heavier. His eyes were dangerous, but he suppressed it. His tone was even gentler. "I'll try." These 3 words were especially heavy. After all, no one dared to ask him to change his habits. It was a habit that he did not change. Even if someone dared to challenge him, he would not listen. Just saying try was already extremely indulgent of her. Unfortunately, the delicate little girl in front of him was not satisfied. She glanced at him a few times, then turned sideways and lowered her head to drink the red bean soup, her lips curling up high. "You still want to try?" Humph. Perfunctory means perfunctory. Yu Xiaoyan was even more helpless. He reached out and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He really indulged her temper. Her temper was too big. When he was too old, he would torment him. But at the same time, he felt an itch in his heart from her torment. He didn't feel angry at all. This emotional fluctuation, as well as this unfamiliar willingness to take a step back. This made Yu Xiaoyan feel a little strange, but he also enjoyed it. He didn't know how long this hypnosis effect would last. He looked at Wei Weibai, who was throwing a tantrum, and couldn't help but smile. She was so cute. Being autistic is cute. Being willful is cute. She was not normally cute, but normally she was still cute. Yu Xiaoyun's affectionate and gentle eyes were filled with thick joy. Bai Weiwei looked back and gazed into a pair of breathtaking eyes that made people sink into them. She was stunned. A thin blush suddenly appeared on her face, and then the blush ran all the way to the tip of her ears. She stopped breathing and immediately turned around. Then, she lowered her head and didn't say anything. Yu Xiaoyan still didn't understand. "What's wrong?" Wei Wei Bai was silent for a moment before she secretly looked at him. Like a peeping kitten, she carefully widened her eyes. In the future, she said softly, you're not allowed to look at other women like that. To read the full article at https://www.sashu.com to read on. com// for the convenience of your next reading. You can click on the button below to record this reading record. Chapter 2671. Yu Xiaoyun touched the corners of his eyes strangely. Is it wrong to look at others like this? Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes trembled and her face turned even redder. Her eyes were filled with a trace of anger. If you look at others like this, won't they fall in love with you? You're a male fox spirit. Yu Xiaoyun felt the corners of his eyes twitch. Male fox spirit. Wei Wei Bai said out loud. She stomped her foot and said fiercely and coquettishly, what kind of eyes are you looking at? It's like you're seducing people. People would think that you're seducing them. If you look at anyone like that, they would think that you're in love with them. Yu Xiaoyun's long eyelashes drooped and his eyes sparkled. Oh, I'm looking at you like this. Am I seducing you, or am I making you fall in love with me? Wei Wei Bai opened her mouth and couldn't say anything for a long time. In the end, she put down the bowl and stood up to say loudly, I'm not eating, it's too sweet. The smile in Yu Xiaoyun's eyes deepened. He stretched out his long arm and grabbed the girl who was about to leave by the waist. He directly carried her to sit on his lap. Wei Wei Bai was shocked, and her entire body was sitting on his firm thighs. I'm seducing you. Wei Wei Bai stared at him blankly, as if she was seduced. Of course, she quickly lowered her head. She was just picky, but now she didn't. She seemed to have become a poor, autistic girl again. She didn't dare to say anything. Yu Xiaoyun didn't let her go. He raised his head and his thin lips touched her cheek. Why are you so smart? His voice was very hoarse. I'm indeed seducing you and making you fall in love with me. Wei Wei Bai's eyes widened. Her entire body was gently placed on the table by the man. His eyes were full of smiles as he leaned down. So, are you in love with me? Wei Wei Bai's entire body stiffened. Her delicate face was full of a bright red color, and her lips had just opened. The man had already lowered his head. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 65. Everything was said without words. After eating supper, Wei Wei Bai had just finished brushing her teeth and was about to go to bed. She saw Yu Xiaoyun standing at the door, wearing black satin home clothes and soft cloth shoes. The door was open, and Chun Shan was saying something with a serious face. Behind Chun Shan were several bodyguards. Half of Yu Xiaoyun's face was hidden in the shadows. His usually gentle eyes had a hint of murderous coldness. He turned his head, and his eyes fell on the girl who had just stepped out of the bathroom. There was a hint of gentleness in his cold eyes. Ayu, calm. Yu Xiaoyun directly. Bai Weiwei yawned and really wanted to continue sleeping like a retard. During this period of time, he ate, drank, and slept well. He didn't stay up late anymore. The system said, Auntie Mina cut off the electricity in half of this place. She even hacked into the system and tried her best to destroy the project data in the male protagonist's computer. If it was destroyed, it would be a heavy loss. System. Someone has already lured the people away from the study. They're opening the safe now. Bai Weiwei nodded, then went directly behind the screen where the bed was. There was also a beautiful antique table in the room. // to make it easier for you to read next time, you can click save below to record this reading record. Chapter 2672. There was a small basket made of bamboo on the table. Wei Wei Bai took out a key from the basket. There was a jade pendant and a small tassel hanging from the key buckle. It was very beautiful. It was just that no one knew that this casually placed key was the key to the safe in Yu Xiaoyun's study, where his most important secret was kept. She would know that the system said so. Of course, Yu Xiaoyun also said that he saw her playing with the jade pendant on the key and casually told her the use of the key. She didn't know if he really trusted her, this retard. Or was he sure that even if she knew, she wouldn't be able to take this key, open the safe, take the information, and escape? Wei Wei Bai's eyes became a little blank. She took the key and walked out step by step. Like a ghost, her eyes were a little dull. As if she was being controlled, she muttered softly. The information, give it to her personally, she muttered almost silently. She muttered to herself in a strange way. She went all the way to the study without any obstruction. The door was half open. Mina was lying in front of the safe seriously, trying to figure out the password. Wei Wei Bai quietly walked to her side and listened to the system saying the location of the hidden surveillance camera. She naturally turned her back to the surveillance camera. Then she almost silently said to Mina, who noticed her arrival with a look of surprise, "By the time you get the information, Yu Xiaoyan will be here. Go away, I'll do it." Mina was shocked for a few seconds before she suddenly reacted. "You're not sick?" Not only was she not sick, but she was also planning to harm Yu Xiaoyan like her. Wei Wei Bai lowered her head and put the key in her hand into the keyhole of the safe. A sarcastic smile slowly appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Not only am I not sick, but I also know what you're thinking. Are you worthy of hypnotizing me?" The door of the safe opened, and the girl's voice was contained in her lips. Only Mina could hear it. Wei Wei Bai's silent mocking eyes were as sharp as knives. "Get the information and get lost. Yu Xiaoyan is mine." This sentence was cold and heavy. Mina's face contorted into a hideous expression. Under the guidance of the system, Wei Wei Bai accurately took out the project from Hainan Airlines. Then she handed it to Mina. Mina looked at the beautiful yet fragile girl in front of her. Her beautiful cherry-red lips started to move silently. His voice was so low that it was almost inaudible, but she still understood what he was saying. "Old woman, if you're so ugly, then don't have a crush on my man. Consider this information as charity. When you see me in the future, remember to lower your head and obediently stay at least 100 meters away." The girl's posture was slender and cold, vicious and arrogant. Like a poisonous flower, his pale face was filled with a sinister and bewitching charm. The system asked, "Why are you provoking her like that?" Wei Wei Bai saw the information in her hand being forcefully snatched away by Mina. She smiled. "Find a scapegoat. Otherwise, how can I be a pitiful little white flower?" The side missions insisted that she be the main female lead. Even the move of betraying Yu Xiaoyan was thrown at him. But who said that she had to betray Yu Xiaoyan to personally hand the information to Mina? Couldn't it be that she was forced and manipulated? As expected, when Mina took the information, her heart relaxed, but a murderous intent was aroused by the girl's mocking gaze. Why? A little girl who pretended to be retarded. She played everyone in circles. Even a man she liked this scheming bitch. Mina saw Wei Wei by looking at her with a cold smile, as if she was looking at a dog. Download the at https://m sashu.com// the button at the bottom to record the reading record. Chapter 2673. She thought about how she wouldn't be able to see Yu Xiaoyan for a while after she left with the information. During this time, it was still this little B*TCH who was enjoying herself by Yu Xiaoyan's side. The hatred that had been hidden in Mina's heart for many years and the madness of not being able to get what she wanted all turned into a terrible impulse. She wanted to kill Wei Wei Bai. Anyway, there was still time. Everyone was attracted by the top hacker that she hired. Mina stuffed the information in her bag and smiled kindly. "I really have to thank Wei Wei for helping me get the information." Wei Wei Bai looked indifferent. With her back to the surveillance camera, she looked like she didn't speak from beginning to end. She looked a little confused and sluggish. Mina reached out and gently placed her fingers on her neck, as if she was comforting her. "So you better die." The smile on Mina's face turned sinister. She put both hands on Wei Wei Bai's neck and was about to strangle her to death. There was a loud sound of a door being kicked open. Outside the door, Yu Xiaoyan came in like a violent wind and kicked Mina away. More than a dozen people rushed in from the door and rushed to restrain Mina. Yu Xiaoyan had already turned around and hugged Wei Wei Bai in his arms. His eyes were full of worry, and his fingers trembled as he touched her neck. He was afraid that something bad would happen to Mina. Wei Wei Bai's eyes were a little empty. She looked at Yu Xiaoyan blankly for a long time, as if she didn't know what was wrong with her. Yu Xiaoyan also saw that something was wrong with her. She had become autistic again. Previously, she looked like a normal person, but as the hypnosis effect weakened, she disappeared. The girl's face was as pale as paper, and her pair of ignorant eyes made Yu Xiaoyan's heart heavy and uncomfortable. He gently reached out and touched her hair. "It's okay, Wei Wei," because he knew Mina's tricks. He also knew that she had hypnotized Wei Wei. He was afraid that this woman had used some vicious hypnosis on her. Only then did he allow Wei Wei to take his keys out at night. He had been following her. When he was outside the door, he was ready to rush in and rescue her at any moment. But she was also afraid that Mina would not be able to get rid of all the hints she had given her. He knew that this hypnotic suggestion was extremely frightening. So can lie low for years. As far as he knew, Mina's hints to her included self-harm so that she could become a normal person. Now, he knew about it again. It turned out that Mina had been hypnotizing her to become a normal person. It was for her to steal the information, because only a normal person would have the intelligence to take the key, walk to the study, and open the safe. He was still worried at the door about what other hints were there other than the hint of stealing the data. She then heard Mina telling Wei Wei to die. At that moment, his mind was a little muddled and violent anger surged up. How dare this woman kill the person he liked in his territory? Yu Xiaoyan hugged Wei Wei and rested his chin on her shoulder. His thin lips were close to her ear as he gently comforted her. But when he looked at Mina, who was in a sorry state, his eyes, which had once been so gentle and affectionate, were now filled with hatred, coldness, and killing intent. When she was about to kill Wei Yu Xiaoyan knew that there were no more hints, because this meant that her use of Wei had come to an end. Mina was kicked until she vomited a few mouthfuls of blood and was tied up tightly. Yu Xiaoyan didn't want to scare Wei so his voice was soft and gentle. "Take her out and wait for me to deal with it." After saying that, he was about to carry Wei out. Mina's sharp voice sounded. "She's not sick, she's lying. She even gave me the information. She wants to kill you, Yu Xiaoyan." Chapter 2674. Yu Xiaoyan's footsteps paused. It seemed that the woman's voice was too sharp. Wei Bai's body trembled. She was a little scared. Yu Xiaoyan quickly reached out to touch her back and whispered, "It's okay now." Mina still wanted to shout something, but her mouth was already stuffed. Yu Xiaoyan carried Wei Bai and left this troublesome place. The information was handed over by Wei Bai. How could he not know? But this was obviously caused by vicious hypnosis. His face was full of anger. After hurriedly carrying the person in his arms back to the house, he put her on the bed. Then he carefully checked Wei Bai's body again, afraid that there were any injuries that he didn't find. Wei Bai was a little ticklish. She stared at him blankly and couldn't help but shrink back. Yu Xiaoyan's fingers paused, and his gloomy face slowly returned. There won't be a next time. This woman was invited back by him, and she almost died. Wei Bai looked at him silently for a while. Suddenly, her mouth flattened, her eyes turned red, and tears fell down. Her body finally began to tremble. She seemed to have finally come back to her senses and knew what was wrong with her. She trembled like a pitiful little animal fleeing for its life, desperately squeezing into Yu Xiaoyan's arms. Wei Bai clutched his clothes tightly with both hands and cried silently. "Yu Xiaoyan," she sobbed, clumsy and stuttering. I'm scared." All the doubts and the hidden scrutiny of Mina's words in his heart, they all disappeared because of her grievances. Yu Xiaoyan pursed his lips, and there was unbearable pity and heartache in his eyes. He kissed her tears and comforted her in a low voice. "Don't be afraid. I will never let you be hurt like this in the future." Wei Bai cried. "I'm scared." Yu Xiaoyan was so guilty that he could barely raise his head. In the end, he kissed her lips. "Don't be afraid. I like you. So I will protect you, always protect you." Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 70. Stupefied side quest. Once the betrayal plan was hatched, the vicious little white flower host would be able to walk down the path of a great female lead. In the end, Not only did the host become more naive, but she also became more retarded. The system patted Fong Xing's shoulder calmly. You'll get used to it. Hee hee. The host likes to be a little white flower. What can you do? From the very beginning, had the system never thought of letting the host be a by Ao Tian? Those super overlords who opened harems of 30 million every day, destroyed planets with a raise of their hands, and stepped on the universe as they walked. Who wouldn't be envious? However, his host loved to reap the benefits of a beauty that could topple empires. She would lie down and wait for favorable impression points to arrive. She liked to act pitiful and pretended to be a white lotus. She was full of schemes and was often accompanied by green tea. The system stared at it for a long time, then thought of those pieces that had been crushed into idiots. He suddenly felt that little white flower was actually very scary. After a long time, he would let his host wander around on her own. It was better for him to save up more money to buy rewards for his host. Perhaps he had suffered a huge blow to his side. He staggered to the side of the trash can and squatted down. The system thought that he had stopped. He yawned and went to bed. Wei Weibai was also coaxed to bed by Yu Xiaoyan. She reached out and grabbed his hand in a daze and finally fell asleep from exhaustion. Yu Xiaoyan looked at her in silence for a long time before he got up and covered her with a blanket. Then he walked out, wanting to settle Na's matter overnight. Wei Weibai was light with nothing to do. She covered herself with a blanket and planned to continue eating and waiting for death. Then she heard the gloomy voice of the side mission. Yo, you're up. Wei Weibai, side mission. The career side mission has been fully activated. Please complete all the tasks in 3 months. It was simple, and there was nothing else. However, when Wei Weibai saw the so-called task list, her expression changed. Destroy the Sea Navigation Project to let Yu Xiaoyan know that she was not sick. Damn, this was asking for her life. Take away Yu Xiaoyan's power, and then humiliate him by saying that he was a dog of the Bai family. A dog for a while, a dog for life. Wei Weibai wanted to curse. You're the dog, you side mission dog. Let's die together. There is also something about whipping him, forcing him to be her slave, and other small tasks that she couldn't bear to look at. Wei Weibai expressed that this was a hellish task list. How long had the side mission been prepared? Wei Weibai, fuck, little watch, disfigurement. Wei Weibai, fuck, I'll treat you to a meal. Little watch, you're welcome. Wei Weibai, haha, Xiao Biao. To make you strive to improve, to make you stand at the top, and to let you crush your target, I'm also worried sick. When you treat us to a meal, just order more abalone feather wings and socket matsutake. Wei Weibai, I'll drink a few tons of dichlorvos to you. Transmigration system. Prince Charming, come here. Transmigration system. Prince Charming, come here. /transmigration system. Prince Charming, come here. Transmigration system. Prince Charming, come here. Transmigration system. Prince Charming, come here. Chapter 2675. Regarding the sudden appearance of a terrifying mission list. Wei Weibai was very conflicted and uncomfortable. The difficulty was so great that it was too scary. This matter troubled her for 3 minutes. Then she continued to cover herself with the blanket and closed her eyes to sleep. She could talk about the big things after she had eaten and slept well. As for the side quests, she could do as she pleased. She had been through so many worlds, and she was an old employee of Wei Weibai who was so greasy that she could squeeze oil out of it. She was extremely calm about any side quest that fell from the sky. This was the standard of maturity of a conqueror. She was mature. These words revealed the beautiful character of a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. After Yu Xiaoyan finished dealing with Na's matter, he went to wash his hands very calmly. There was a brass basin with a white towel beside it. His expression was calm as his slender and beautiful fingers slid through the water. He had just slapped that woman. He felt dirty. After Yu Xiaoyan washed his hands, the maid came forward to serve supper. It was almost dawn. He was used to eating something after dealing with things. It was still vegetarian porridge without any minced meat. It was tasteless. He was used to eating it, so he didn't feel much. She should still be sleeping. Yu Xiaoyan thought of Wei Wei Bai's sleeping appearance. She was not very well behaved, but she was still very heavy. Once she was really asleep, it would be difficult to wake her up. Yu Xiaoyan felt that this was the sleeping style of a child because there were no worries in her mind. After finishing the porridge, the taste was bland. When Yu Xiaoyan put down the bowl, he inexplicably thought of the various small requirements written in the book. One of them was for him not to be a vegetarian. He had been a vegetarian for some years. When he first arrived at the Bai family, Old Master Bai observed him for a long time. He was afraid that he would rebel and was a wolf cub. Yu Xiaoyan was indeed a wolf. He was wrapped in a wolf's ambition. He had a black heart and black lungs since he was young. His father could serve the Bai family for so many years and mix in this dirty water for so many years. He was not clean to begin with. He had inherited his father's observation skills since he was young. Except for the people he cared about, he had always been extremely cold. But he had a pair of very good eyes. He inherited his mother's gentle and affectionate eyes. Everyone seemed to be deeply in love with each other. Old Master Bai saw that he was young and his eyes were so gentle. This was the first time that Old Master Bai, who had always had sharp eyes, made a mistake. She felt that he was not a threat, and that his personality should be soft. This was his first life and death trial in the Bai clan. As long as he did not pass the test of Old Master Bai and let him think that he was in the slightest danger, he probably wouldn't have lived to this day. Yu Xiaoyan slowly got up and walked out of the punishment room. Behind her were servants and bodyguards. The love garden was very big, with pavilions and terraces, spacious and lonely. This was where Old Master Bai missed the person he loved. From Bai Yanlan, he really couldn't see the slightest bit of goodness in the woman that Old Master Bai loved. How could his daughter be so terrible? In that case, the dead old woman was probably not much better. However, she had given birth to Wei Wei Bai. From Wei Wei Bai, he could see that everything about Wei Wei Bai was good. The human heart was really biased. The first year he entered the Bai family, he started to eat vegetarian food, just because he wanted to start playing the role of a weak, incompetent, kind, and affectionate good child. When the rabbit he raised died, he cried. The magnolia flowers that he had raised in the garden for a long time withered, and he pretentiously learned how to bury the flowers in the dream of the red chamber. Later on, he started not to eat meat, but because he felt that all living things were bitter, he was merciful and refused to eat. He remembered the scene of the servants lining up and persuading him to eat meat one by one. The small him curled up his body, hugging his knees with his hands and burying his head on his thighs. At https://www.sashu.com/quick to read the full article at https://www.sashu.com/quick to txt download at https://www.sashu.com quick to read on. Com. Chapter 2676. His voice was filled with rejection and sadness. His expression, however, was terrifyingly cold. Kindness could not be acted as a habit. He was still cold and vicious. Affection could not be faked. He was still cold and distant. Only the habit of being a vegetarian had fooled Old Master Bai, even if he had the power to eat meat in the future and reveal his true colors. This habit was not easy to get rid of. However, there was no harm in trying it now. After all, being a vegetarian for a long time would indeed make one's body weaker. It might even shorten one's life. Thinking of the girl's willfulness and arrogance, he wanted him to change. Before Yu Xiaoyan entered the room, he whispered to the side, "From tomorrow onwards, add some meat to my menu." Change little by little. Compared to the habit of being a vegetarian, he wanted to make her happy more. The servants and bodyguards who followed beside him were a little surprised. Yu Xiaoyan had already walked into the room. The sky had just brightened. Wei Wei Bai was still sleeping. He quietly got on the bed and held her in his arms. He pretended that he had never left. The man smelled the soft fragrance of the girl in his arms and slowly closed his eyes. The blood in the middle of the night was appeased. Yu Xiaoyan fell into a peaceful sleep. Recently, He did not have nightmares, nor did he have dreams of holding power and controlling people's lives. Only the girl's fragrance accompanied him, and he slept peacefully, almost without dreams. During breakfast, Wei Wei Bai found that there was a little bit of minced meat in Yu Xiaoyun's porridge. She was a mentally disabled person, so even if she saw it, she pretended not to see it. After all, a mentally disabled person's observation skills were too good, so they were not mentally disabled. The side quest was calculating the time coldly at the side. 3 months. Each month counts as 30 days. A total of 90 days. You still have 89 days and 13 hours left. Then it began to make a terrifying sound. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but ask, "What's that sound?" The side quest said, "If you fail the side quest, won't you be disfigured? I'll sharpen the bone knife first." Bone knife? Even the bones had to be cut if one was disfigured. Wei Wei Bai's face turned pale. Then she thought for a moment and tried to negotiate. "If I succeed in the side quest, can I borrow your knife?" After all, with a slash, one soul would also be disfigured. This proved that this knife was not ordinary. "Xiao Biao, why do you want to borrow it? Do you have any enemies that you want to disfigure?" Wei Wei Bai said with a look of self-pity, "No, I'm not complaining that my face is not perfect enough. There's a fine line between disfigurement and plastic surgery. When the time comes, I'll just have to grind my face with a knife to remove all the imperfections on my face. I'll be the most beautiful woman in the world." Xiao Biao. There was too much information in this line, and it couldn't understand it. Wei Wei Bai held her face in her hands. Although I'm very beautiful, there is no limit to being beautiful. We have to have some lofty goals, such as being the #1 beauty in the universe." Xiao Biao. What kind of noble pursuit was this? You might as well aim to be the #1 white flower in the universe. At the very least, this is a skill point. Every day, he would hold his face and ask for the prettiest girl. Don't you think it's too shabby to mention this kind of pursuit? The system ate the blueberry cake in the side fridge. As it ate, it reached out to pat Xiao Biao's shoulder and said earnestly, "You've just become a spirit. You'll get used to her after a while." Xiao Biao. What kind of shameless host did it end up with? The system opened the fridge. "How about I treat you to strawberry pudding?" Xiao Biao. "That's my fridge." The system, "We're family, don't be so polite." Xiao Biao. What kind of shameless system did it end up with? Although the task list was very stressful, Wei Wei Bai was still leisurely. Yu Xiaoyun couldn't bear to see her leisurely and began to take her out for a walk. When there was a big meeting, she quietly played with jigsaw puzzles. When there was a project, she accompanied Yu Xiaoyun, eating and watching TV. After a long time, everyone knew that the girl who followed Yu Xiaoyun was gentle and weak. She wore a chong sam and was unusually quiet and beautiful. She was Yu Xiaoyun's woman. Wei Wei Bai did not refute. Yu Xiaoyun did not refute and allowed this kind of thing to spread. The project progressed quickly, and only the last contract was left to be signed. The contract would be signed in about a week when the person in charge over there came over. Then, their transformation would be completely successful. After Yu Xiaoyun finished the remote meeting, he threw away his headphones and looked back. He saw Wei Wei Bai lying on the table, sleeping quietly. The girl's hair was as black as ink, and her eyelashes were thick and long. Her skin was as white as clouds, and was unusually clean and beautiful. Yu Xiaoyun looked at her for a while. That pair of gentle eyes with deep affection seemed to fill the entire sky. He kissed her hair gently. The man's voice was low and gentle. "Good night, Wei Wei." To facilitate your next reading, you can click on the Chapter 2677. Yu Xiaoyun was concerned about Wei Wei Bai's psychological problems. To invite a famous psychiatrist in M country, he personally traveled to M country. Wei Wei Bai did not follow him. Yu Xiaoyun's recent maritime project had caused a lot of commotion. Everyone's eyes were on him. If he went abroad now, he would become a target if he brought Wei Wei Bai with him. He refused to take her on a risky trip, so he could only go personally. If everything went smoothly, he would be back in 3 days. Before Yu Xiaoyun left, he personally made a jade qipao for Wei Wei Bai. It had beautiful light orange tassels and a thin, aqua-colored, fan-shaped jade pendant. The jade pendant was engraved with the word Yun. Wei Wei Bai thought that this thing was very fun. She twirled the tassels with her fingers with a serious expression. Yu Xiaoyan lowered his head and kissed her cheek. He whispered, "Wait for me to come back." Then he turned around and was about to leave. A pair of hands had already hugged his waist from behind. The girl's warmth and softness clung to his strong back. She was silent, as if she wanted him to stay. Yu Xiaoyan's body was stiff for a moment, but the expression on his face was gentle and pleasant. He did not move and let her hug him. The girl was very patient and kept hugging him without letting go. Yu Xiaoyan also patiently let her hug him. Finally, she loosened her arms and left his body, as if she felt that she was being willful. Yu Xiaoyan suddenly turned around, reached out and grabbed her arm. He pulled her into his arms and lowered his head to kiss her. Yu Xiaoyan let go of her and let her sit on the chair obediently. Then he bent down and pinned the qipao to the second button of her qipao. The beautiful fan-shaped jade pendant and tassels hung on the silk material. The man's breath was a little messy, but his tone was so gentle that it made people's scalps tingle. There are red beans in the tassels. Although I know you don't understand, I still want you to know from time to time. This is also my intention. Red beans, yearning. He knew it himself, but he was afraid that she did not understand, so he pinned it to her lapel. As expected, Wei Wei Bai opened a pair of watery round eyes and looked at him innocently and blankly. Yu Xiaoyan smiled helplessly. "I'll teach you next time." Her dependence on him was probably just a habit. It had nothing to do with love and lovesickness. Yu Xiaoyan got up and turned to leave. When he walked out of the door, he couldn't help but look back, only to see that the girl's fingers were already touching the tassel on her chest. He also took out a few small red beans strung in the tassel. She touched red bean with her fingertips, her clear and focused eyes staring at him. The contours of her beautiful body, her ink-black hair that fell behind her, and her shadow that was elongated by the light. Everything felt as beautiful as a dream. Yu Xiaoyan was in a trance for a moment. It was as if she was not sick and understood the meaning of red bean. That was why she used such a loving and beautiful gaze to obediently send him off. This thought flashed through his mind, and he found it funny. Perhaps it was because he was too eager to see her return to normal that he started hallucinating. After Yu Xiaoyan left, Wei Wei Bai took off the red bean and threw it on the table one by one to play with it. While crushing the hard red bean, she said to the system, "Seize power first, then lock him up. Then, finish the side main mission within 3 months and hang yourself to leave." With Yu Xiaoyan's personality, he was a master of forbearance. She could do her best to seize his temporary power, but as long as she didn't kill him, he would definitely be able to make a comeback. When that time came, she would end up like Bai Yanlan, dead beyond dead. Wei Wei Bai had also thought it through. In any case, she would seize Yu Xiaoyan's temporary power within 3 months. She didn't have to accept all of his power and empire. This could be done. Is at https://www.sashu.com. Chapter 2678. Then, before the rest of the people found out, she would complete the side quest. After 3 months, he would be able to contact the rest of the people to turn the tables. It didn't matter if her mission was completed. Wei Wei Bai had calculated the mission rehearsal countless times. She found that this was the best and most dangerous way. The side quest wouldn't be over until it forced her into a dead end. She was too beautiful. Therefore, the side quest had been jealous of her for a long time. It finally found an opportunity to ruin her face, so it used the side quest to do such a vicious thing. This thought made her feel deeply depressed. The system, the host's narcissism had risen to another level. The side quest also heard she only had a mouth, 2 eyes, and a nose. What was there to be jealous of? What was there to be jealous of? The psychiatrist that Yu Xiaoyan invited had a strange temper. Even though he was invited, he wasn't casual because the other party still had an academic conference to attend. Yu Xiaoyan could have waited, but for 3 days, every night was torturous. He had nightmares when he slept. When he woke up and faced the cold and empty room, he felt that it was better to have nightmares. He felt that he was being tortured by lovesickness. When he called back, although the servant picked up, Wei Wei Bai didn't pick up. She seemed to have fallen in love with a little game. Yu Xiaoyan asked, "What game?" The servant replied, "She's counting the tassels you made for her, the jade pendant. He even made a bracelet for her. She took it out to play with." Yu Xiaoyan wondered if she missed him. That was why she played with the things he gave her repeatedly. Yu Xiaoyan felt warm in his heart, and the nightmares weren't so uncomfortable anymore. So once he confirmed that the psychiatrist would come, he took the plane back alone. Just as he got off the plane, a call came in hurriedly. Yu Xiaoyan didn't think much about it and picked up the call. Something had happened to Chen Shan. No, to be precise, something had happened to the elites of the upper class. During the upper class meeting, the conference room suddenly exploded. Everyone was sent to the hospital. Chen Shan was also admitted to the hospital. Fortunately, no one died. Yu Xiaoyan frowned, and a trace of solemnity appeared on his face. He called the hospital, but found that the medical staff at the hospital refused to answer his questions. They only kept saying that the patient's information needed to be kept confidential. Yu Xiaoyan's heart skipped a beat. He felt that something was wrong. Moreover, he knew that the meeting was about the last contract for the Hainan Airlines project. It was a remote meeting. It was a done deal. That was why he didn't continue to follow up. He let Chen Shan take full responsibility. The people who signed the contract must have seen the explosion in the meeting room through the video. If it wasn't handled properly, the time of the explosion would definitely cause the project to stop. But it was not the most serious. What was even more serious was that he couldn't even contact his trusted aides. All kinds of terrifying guesses had already flashed through Yu Xiaoyan's mind. Pursing his lips tightly, he suddenly thought of something and immediately called back. However, the servant did not take it. She clearly knew that the best choice was to immediately rush to the hospital with her bodyguards. But at this moment, Yu Xiaoyan's mind went blank. "Where's Wei Wei?" Yu Xiaoyan got into the car and shouted to the driver, "Go home immediately." He sent half of his bodyguards to the hospital while he rushed home immediately. He had 10,000 ways to deal with the crisis of power being seized. However, there was one price that he could not afford to pay. That was Wei Wei Bai's safety. Her mind was so weak that she would not be able to protect herself at all. If she fell into the hands of his enemies, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yu Xiaoyan's fingers gripped the seat of the car tightly, the veins on the back of his hands bulging. Chapter 2679. He expressionlessly asked the driver to drive the car to the maximum speed. Finally, he rushed home as fast as he could, but found that the servants were gone. The Bai family's house sign had been replaced by the surname Yu, but he saw that the house sign at the door had changed to the surname Bai again, and the entire Bai family was empty. The bodyguard following behind Yu Xiaoyan suddenly received a call. It was a woman's voice with a voice changer. It was very hoarse, and he couldn't hear anything. "If you want her to live, enter the door alone." Yu Xiaoyan stopped in his tracks and stared at the door. It was already dark. The entire house was immersed in a hellish darkness. Yu Xiaoyan looked at the door coldly and said calmly, "Okay." Then he turned to the bodyguard behind him and said, "It's nothing serious. Wait here." After saying that, his face was tense as he stepped in step by step. The house was empty, and some places didn't even have the lights on. The flowers in the love garden were dark, and it wasn't as beautiful as it was during the day. Yu Xiaoyan's expression was indifferent as he walked toward his house step by step. The lights in the house were on. A faint humming sound could be heard. It was sweet and soft, and it tickled the listener's ears. Yu Xiaoyan stopped in his tracks and heard that it was a song sung by a certain singer. It seemed that the name of the song was Red Bean. When a young girl hummed this song, it was intermittent. The song was in her lips, as if it could be brewed into a sweet taste. Yu Xiaoyan walked in. The air was filled with the fragrance of flowers. He saw that the table was full of flowers picked from the love garden. The young girl was wearing a green chong sam, and the clear water jade pendant hung on her chest. She sat in an elegant posture, and her calves were side by side. The beautiful white scenery of the split could be faintly seen. It seemed that she didn't notice that he was here. Wei Wei Bai's side profile was quiet and indifferent. Her fingers were holding the flowers unhurriedly, and she was arranging flowers and doing flower art. With a snap, the small scissors cut off a Chinese rose branch. The bright red rose was pinned to the side of the girl's hair. She revealed a gentle smile. Her eyes were like water, but there wasn't a trace of confusion. Yu Xiaoyan slowed down his footsteps and stared at her. There was something stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say a word. He gently raised his hand, just a little bit away from touching the girl's thin back. Wei Wei Bai gently tilted her head and said with a smile, "Xiaoyun, you're back. I counted a few hundred red beans in the 3 days you were gone." Yu Xiaoyun looked at her silently. In the end, he sighed and placed his fingertips on her shoulder. With incomparable gentleness, he bent over and rested his face on her shoulder. He smelled the sweet and soft scent of her body, as well as the faint fragrance of flowers. He didn't seem to dare to speak. He was afraid of breaking something. Wei Wei Bai didn't say anything and just let him continue like an ostrich. In the end, Yu Xiaoyun's voice still sounded heavily. "Last time, was it you who tried to assassinate me?" Wei Wei Bai's tone was calm and relaxed. "Yes, I was impulsive. After all, it's not difficult to find out that I was the one who made that call, but you didn't find out. It was possible to find out, but he didn't check, because subconsciously, he and everyone else thought that she was a fool. Therefore, she couldn't have leaked any information, and no one thought of checking the phone. This was a huge oversight, but because of her uniqueness, it was overlooked." Yu Xiaoyun's thin lips trembled. "Why did you save me?" Wei Wei Bai said innocently. "Of course it's to gain your trust. Otherwise, how could I stay?" Download the mobile article at https://m/sashu.com. Chapter 2680. Yu Xiaoyun's breathing paused, and his eyes seemed to be a little moist. "What you want to destroy this time is my project." Her action of destroying everything. She wanted to destroy the sea navigation project. Wei Wei Bai was silent for a moment, then suddenly burst out laughing. "You're stupid," she said coquettishly, and her fingers touched his hair. But her voice was soft and cruel. "The one I want to destroy is you." After saying that, she pushed him away impatiently. The girl's back was leaning against the edge of the table. The flowers on the table made her face bright red, and her eyes were full of elegance. As if she didn't care, she elegantly crossed her legs. "I've endured for so many years, but you rushed out and completely destroyed the Bai family. You also destroyed my path to controlling the Bai family. I even have the heart to kill you." Yu Xiaoyan stood there in a daze. From a moment he heard the voice change her, he began to doubt it, because even though the voice had changed, the feeling was unusually familiar to him. His intuition had always been too accurate. He had just come in alone, but he really found that his little girl had already grown up. No, it should be said that she had always been mature. The man had always been gentle and calm, elegant and confident, but now he was wrapped in decadence. He couldn't even stand up straight. "You've never been stupid? You also designed me now last time?" Wei Wei Bai looked at him speechlessly for a while, then pursed her lips and smiled. She was delicate and cute. "Yes, that's right. Innocent words, but terrifyingly calm and cruel." In fact, it wasn't the first time Yu Xiaoyan saw her normal appearance. He thought that she was hypnotized. Actually, this was the real her. The funny thing was that even though she was normal when he saw her, he couldn't take back his habit of liking her. "What do you want? Purely to take revenge on me?" Yu Xiaoyun's face calmed down, but there was still a trace of sadness in his gentle eyes. Wei Wei Bai casually hooked the emerald bracelet on her wrist and sneered. "Revenge? I want the entire Bai family. You stole my things, Yu Xiaoyan." Yu Xiaoyan, on the other hand, calmed down. He stared at her silently for a while. Then he smiled helplessly. "You should continue pretending and not offend me so recklessly, you know? All I have to do is to shout, and there will be plenty of people to capture you. And then..." Yu Xiaoyan took a few quick steps forward and suddenly grabbed Wei Wei Bai's fragile neck with one hand. He pinned her down and single-handedly brought the fragile and light girl onto the table. The flowers on the table began to shatter. An extremely dangerous expression appeared on Yu Xiaoyun's calm face. Perhaps there is no need for others. I alone can control you, kill you, and return everything to its original place. All your efforts will be useless. Wei Wei Bai coughed lightly, but couldn't say anything. His neck was stuck. Yu Xiaoyun's voice was soft and low. Perhaps I won't kill you, but I'll tie you up and make you my pet. Wei Wei Bai's eyes turned sharp, but she really didn't have the strength to struggle. This was the difference in physical strength between men and women. Yu Xiaoyun saw that her resentful and hateful eyes were bright and clear. He peeled off the shell of ignorance. She was still the girl who seduced his emotions. Yu Xiaoyun laughed softly, and there was a hint of anger and suppressed killing intent in his laughter. You really make me angry. She revealed her ambition so casually and pretended to be stupid to brush off his feelings. She used him like a fool, but she didn't use him completely. Instead, she thought that he wouldn't be able to recover after she ruined one of his projects and immediately came to show off proudly. Wasn't his love for her worth a few more years of hiding? Yu Xiaoyun's fingers touched her cheek forcefully, and his fingertips rubbed against her skin. He really had the urge to destroy her. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. His muscles lost all strength, and he almost collapsed. The girl under him had already reached out and pushed him. He was lying on the huge wooden table, crushing more than a dozen flowers. The fragrance of the flowers was strong. It was Wei Wei Bai's turn to be on top of him. She reached out and patted Yu Xiaoyun's face hard. Who are you calling a pet? The XX fragrance with 20 life points was a must-have at home and the best item to steal fragrances. Wei Wei Bai's fingers tugged at his collar, and she revealed a cold smile. You are my pet, Xiao Yunyan. Side mission list. Identity exposed. Force the male lead to stop the project. Seize part of the power completed. //. Chapter 26, 81. The fragrance of flowers, the fragrance of a young girl, the silky, smooth feeling of a Cheongsam. After his muscles relaxed, he was abnormally excited, causing the face of the man lying on the table to be dyed red. However, his voice was unusually calm, without a trace of emotion. Are you trying to fight with me? He had endured for many years in the Bai family's struggle for power and profit, nibbling away at it step by step. He didn't know how much strength Wei Wei Bai had hidden after enduring for so many years. However, if it was just a method to restrain him and there was no follow-up, she was still too naive. Yu Xiaoyun's face was flushed and hot sweat appeared. In contrast, there was no trace of excitement on his delicate and handsome face. Although the drug could affect his body, it couldn't shake his spirit in the slightest. The sharp heartache made his body tremble nervously. He looked at the girl on top of him. Her eyes, which had always been misty, were now bright and lively. She was too beautiful, too cunning. However, her fragile and small face was still pale and delicate. Her beautiful and delicate limbs were abnormally thin and petite when leaning against his body. Even if it was such a showy time, Yu Xiaoyun found that she still had that pitiful beauty. It made the tyranny in his heart and the desire to bully her reignite. He wanted her to cry. He wanted her to struggle. The pity for her began to dissipate bit by bit, revealing the natural, tormenting attack in a man's heart. Yu Xiaoyun advised in a low voice, "Let go of me, Wei Wei. I still like you." If he stopped all his plans now, he wouldn't be serious with her. He didn't want to treat her as an enemy. He liked her, loved her so much that his heart was moved. He couldn't bear to use tricks on her, nor could he bear to take revenge on her. Wei Wei Bai's face with her back to the light was distant and white, as cold as snow. She snorted coldly, and her tone was mocking. "If I kill you, everything will be solved. Will I give you a chance to make a comeback?" Yu Xiaoyun's eyelashes trembled, and the longing in his eyes became a little colder, even a little mocking. "The people outside are all the people I brought. If I shout, they will all come in." Wei Wei Bai suddenly took a bunch of flowers and stuffed them into his mouth. "All right, you can't make a sound like this, right?" Yu Xiaoyun, He also wanted to say that if he wasn't out after 10 minutes, those people would still rush in. Wei Wei Bai found the small scissors in the pile of flowers. The sharp scissors were pointed at his carotid artery. If you die, although it will be chaotic for a while, your elites are all in hospital. They won't be able to care about your business for the time being. He had lost his backbone. Those who were in charge were all in the hospital. Everything would be in chaos. At that time, as long as her methods were ruthless and decisive, she might really be able to nibble away more than half of his businesses. Yu Xiaoyan looked at her indifferently and depressingly. His fingers were trembling, a sign that he was using too much force. But the effect of the drug was too good. His muscles were still weak. However, he could feel that his strength was slowly returning. However, the return time was too slow. By the time he really had the strength to suppress her, her scissors should have already pierced his throat. The cold tip of the scissors touched his skin. Yu Xiaoyan's fingers moved even more violently. His eyes began to become bloodshot, as if he was trying his best to find the warmth of the past in the girl's eyes. Fast to read the full article at https://www.sashu.com/fast to txt download at https://www.sashu.com fast to read on your phone. https://m Sashu.com to facilitate your next reading, you can click on the fast. Chapter 2682. However, he only saw her distant eyes without any warmth. He looked at her for too long. Wei Wei Bai seemed to be a little uncomfortable and frowned. She pursed her lips. Don't look at me like that. Don't come looking for me even if you die. I'm just taking everything that belongs to me. You should accept your loss. After saying that, she used force in her fingers and the scissors pierced his skin. Warm blood flowed down from his neck. Yu Xiaoyan's last trace of softness and hope slowly disappeared. He looked at her with gloomy eyes and finally lowered his eyes. She was really cruel to him. She was even crueler than he was to Bai Yanlan. At least he didn't have a good expression on his face towards Bai Yanlan, making her feel that he was possible. However, she took the initiative to approach him, hug him, and say that she liked him. The honey trap was an old trick, but it was the most useful trick in thousands of years. He actually fell for such an obvious trap. Her strength seemed to be a little too strong. Yu Xiaoyan's expression didn't change, and there was no trace of fear in his eyes. Instead, the scissors on his neck were a little stiff. Wei Wei Bai seemed to be a little hesitant, and there was a trace of fluctuation in her indifferent eyes. Yu Xiaoyan saw that her breathing seemed to be a little heavier. Even her fingers were trembling. It seemed like she was afraid. He didn't need to think too much to know the answer. She was afraid because she had never killed anyone before. A ruthless person thought that it was easy to kill someone, but they didn't know that if they hadn't killed someone personally, they wouldn't be able to get over it easily. Yu Xiaoyan wanted to show a mocking smile. He was also anxious for her. If she didn't make a move, there would be no chance. Wei Wei Bai bit her lip, and her eyes finally turned ruthless. She took a few deep breaths. Finally, the girl raised her hand, and the scissors were raised as well. She turned her face away and was about to stab the scissors into his neck. However, the sound of chaotic footsteps was heard. Mr. Yu, the team leader of the bodyguards, called out from outside the half-open door. Wei Wei Bai's face turned pale. Her fingers trembled, and the scissors fell to the ground. She wanted to get the scissors, but a pair of hands had already grabbed her waist tightly. Her slender waist trembled in pain under the man's warm and rough palm. Wei Wei Bai sucked in a breath of cold air. She felt that the little strength he had recovered was used to pinch her. Yu Xiaoyan's strength had not really recovered. The little bit of strength in his fingers was the last bit of strength he could use. The bodyguards outside the door seemed to sense that something was wrong. He said, "Mr. Yu, I'm sorry to offend you." With that, he waved his hand, and everyone followed behind him, ready to break in. On the other hand, Wei Wei Bai had a panicked expression on her face. She no longer had the cold and ruthless appearance that she had pretended to have. Once the bodyguards came in, the fact that she had attacked him would be exposed. Seriously. Yu Xiaoyan looked at her with a gentle gaze. If it was him, he would kill someone. He had already set up an ambush for the bodyguards outside the door. He wasn't completely unprepared and thought that he could kill someone who liked him without fail. Under Yu Xiaoyun's soft and affectionate gaze, there was a fierce and violent tangle of emotion surging. Under his fingers, the softness of her waist and the nervousness of struggling to break free. These were the best factors to provoke him. Wei Wei Bai could not break free from him. Without a weapon, even if she wanted to reach out and strangle him to death, it would take time. And there was no time. It was very difficult for a person to kill others in an instant without a weapon, especially a girl like Bai Weiwei who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. The bodyguard's footsteps had already stepped into the room, and they were about to turn around. Chapter 2683. Sitting on top of Yu Xiaoyan, Bai Weiwei's pair of panicked and misty eyes suddenly calmed down. She lowered her eyes and reached out to gently hold his face. Her fingers even began to remove the flowers in his mouth. With her other hand, she pulled open the lapel of her Chong Sam. The silk fabric of the Chong Sam fell to the ground like flowing water. The jade tablet of the fan shattered on the ground. Under the moonlight, the beautiful scenery at this moment was stunning and enchanting. Her ink-colored hair was thick and winding. It flowed on her porcelain-like skin. Yu Xiaoyan stared at her in disbelief, as if he was shocked. The girl lowered her head. Her lips were too beautiful. They were even sweeter than the color of red beans. The bodyguards had already barged in. Half of the screen was placed in front of the living room. Their eyes had just caught a glimpse of the screen. Intertwining shadows could be seen on the screen made of silk. It was hazy and ambiguous. The leader trembled and immediately shouted, "Lower your heads." Damn it, this was the rhythm of going blind. If he really saw anything, his eyes would be gouged out. But because of his professional intuition, the leader still asked in an instant, "Mr. Yu, can we go in?" Everyone lowered their heads obediently. No one moved. They didn't leave immediately. After all, if someone was in danger, they could use this trick to fool others. Everyone had received professional training, so they still had the concept of crisis management. It was impossible for them to see a little ambiguous shadow. They felt that their young master was fine. Suddenly, in the living room, the things on the huge table fell to the ground. The man who was supposed to be lying on the table pushed the girl on the table like a beast and covered her. The man's face was covered in sweat, and his face was a little pale because of excessive force. He pulled off the coat on his body with difficulty. It wrapped her beautiful body, but the coat was too short, and he couldn't cover everything. At this moment, Yu Xiaoyan's mind was filled with anger and jealousy. He shouted fiercely, "Get out!" The bodyguards were shocked and immediately turned to leave. They didn't dare to think too much. No one dared to look up to see if there was a problem with their boss. Who had the courage to look at such a scene? That was Yu Xiaoyun's favorite woman. The door was closed. Yu Xiaoyun's face was twisted tragically. "Are you happy? Are you done playing?" The young girl beneath him had a pair of round eyes, looking a little innocent and cute. She slowly revealed a smile. She stretched out her fair arms like an enchanting snake and hugged his neck. The cat-like girl said softly, "That's not enough. Yu Xiaoyan, I want you to hand over your authority to me. Otherwise, I won't let you go." Yu Xiaoyan felt like his brain was about to explode. The heat in his body surged even more intensely. His breath was like the temperature of magma. "Stop messing around. I've allowed you to do this once, but I won't let you do it again." If people found out that she was the one who had caused all those injuries in the hospital, they would be furious. She was also the reason why he was being hunted down when news of him was leaked. She was waiting for death. Yu Xiaoyan didn't think that she had any follow-up moves. Her only goal was to kill him and take advantage of the chaos to seize power. Now that she was trapped under his body, how could she have the chance to kill him? Wei Wei Bai glanced at him indifferently. Then, she tilted her head and said, "Don't you feel uncomfortable? The drug is very strong." Yu Xiaoyan held her chin and stared at her bright red lips. His eyes were in a trance. He admitted that he was tempted, but it wasn't just because of the drug. Quick to read the full article at https://www.sashu.com. Quick to read the at https://m.sashu.com. Quick. Chapter 2684. Everything about the girl was tempting him, and the drug only matured the impulse. However, the girl was neither fast nor slow. Her fingertips gently stroked his hair. There are still 3 minutes. Yu Xiaoyun's breath sank. The girl's voice sounded casually. Who should I kill? Let's kill the team leader in charge of the sea navigation project first. Yu Xiaoyun's expression was a little stiff. However, he heard Wei Wei by saying differently. You can't contact the hospital, right? Because they're not in the hospital at all. The girl smiled. Let them get injured, and then use a fake ambulance to bring them to the place I prepared. Don't be afraid. There's all the hospital equipment there. All your people won't die, and they'll be able to get the best care. Space Dimensional Card. Once in 100 years, it exploded with a discount. The system used all its power to burn a bunch of Ant Tong who came to fight for the discount to get it. 1 life value per day, and enjoy the joy of establishing a dimensional card. Wei Wei Bai built a very good hospital and put in the space. Everything in the space looked like a city. No one who entered would feel anything strange. It was just that they couldn't leave the hospital because the outside of the hospital was guarded by iron walls. Wei Wei Bai only wanted Yu Xiaoyun to be obedient for 3 months. She didn't really want his power and property. She wouldn't want it even if it was given to her for free. However, after studying the list of side missions several times, she found that all the side missions were to make Yu Xiaoyun obedient for 3 months. Make him work like a cow or a horse or something. Although she could see that the side missions were painstakingly paving the way for her to seize power and become a Wu Zetian type of aggressor. However, Wei Wei Bai was completely indifferent. Anyway, she would complete all the side missions on the list. She would hold the power in her hands for 3 months and complete the last side mission. Then, she would have nothing to do. Therefore, she controlled Yu Xiaoyun's people as hostages and made him obedient. That was considered a success. If she really wanted to make Yu Xiaoyun chaotic for a period of time, the right thing to do was to kill all his people. He didn't want to wait for 3 months before returning them to him. Yu Xiaoyun narrowed his eyes and stared at her coldly, as if he didn't expect her to have such a move. After all, it was not easy to hide so many people. Wei Wei Bai giggled. You won't be able to find it. Hurry up and promise me, or I'll start killing people. Those people of yours are the elites of your upper echelons. Without this team, Yu Xiaoyun would suffer heavy losses. His business was managed by this group of people. Without them, he would be no different from a broken leg. Yu Xiaoyun finally asked softly, what do you want? Wei Wei Bai, I want everything in the Bai family, including the management of your business. Also, you have to listen to me and be my slave. Yu Xiaoyun seemed to find it hard to understand. Be your slave? Wei Wei Bai's eyelashes were still stained with the moisture from earlier. Her snow-white face was extremely clean. Even her eyes, which were filled with arrogance and desire for power, were filled with unimaginable beauty because of her ambition. It was really a pair of exceptionally beautiful eyes that made people want to bully them. Yu Xiaoyun couldn't help but smile. His eyes were affectionate and gentle, as if he was gazing at her dotingly. What if I say that I want them all to die? Wei Wei Bai was stunned, and the smug look on her face also froze. Yu Xiaoyun's smile was in his eyes. He lowered his body, and a shadow covered his face. He spoke slowly and dangerously, 1 word at a time. Why do you think that I'm a good person who would use my power to exchange for other people's lives? Yu Xiaoyun's thin lips curled up slightly. They're all dead. What does it have to do with me, Wei Wei? Wei Wei Bai. Then her face turned pale, and her body slowly stiffened. This script was a little off track. Yu Xiaoyun's crazy temper was more ruthless than expected. / crossover system. Adonis, come over here, comma. Chapter 2685. From a very long time ago, Yu Xiaoyan knew that he was a cold person to the end. His appearance was gentle and magnanimous, elegant and beautiful. It was just to hide the rotten darkness in him. Everyone said that he was kind-hearted and soft-hearted. Before he showed his fangs, sometimes he even believed it himself. Yu Xiaoyan reached out and touched his eyes. This was a pair of very deceiving eyes. They were too affectionate, too pure and gentle. Through the gaps between his fingertips, he saw that the face of the girl under him was as pale as paper. It seemed that she didn't expect him to have a personality that would perish together with her. She also had a deceiving appearance. Anyone who saw her like this would think that she was easy to bully. Even he had neglected the fact that her ignorant and blank eyes were filled with indifference. Yu Xiaoyan couldn't help but laugh. It was just that her heart was too ruthless and not mature enough. Suddenly, a trace of determination appeared on Wei Wei Bai's face. She reached out and pushed him fiercely on the table. Yu Xiaoyan, who hadn't recovered his strength, hit the table. She directly slid to the ground. His loose coat hung on her body, revealing her two beautiful legs, but her hand was about to grab the scissors. But in the next second, her entire body was grabbed by Yu Xiaoyan with one hand. The feeling of suffocation made her frown, but she still refused to give up and wanted to grab the scissors. It was as if she wanted to perish together with him. Yu Xiaoyan grabbed this kitten. He was really aroused by her, and his eyes were bloodshot. But more than that, he felt helpless. Perhaps he couldn't take back his habit of liking her for a while. He actually felt that her red eyes and anxious appearance were exceptionally pitiful. It was as if he was bullying her. Yu Xiaoyan's strength was almost gone. He sighed softly and rubbed his lips against her face. Okay, stop fooling around. He was too patient with her. At this time, he couldn't bear to choke her and crush her throat bones. He also couldn't bear to call the bodyguards in to see her like this. He really couldn't bear to let anyone else see her beauty in such a sorry state. Wei Wei Bai tried her best, but couldn't catch scissors. She couldn't wait for him to die as she cursed in a low voice. Yu Xiaoyan, you don't know what I've been through. I've endured for so long just to get the Bai family. How can you take everything away from me? You deserve to die. You bastard. You're crazy. You vegetarian idiot. She must have really used up all her means. Seeing that he wasn't threatened at all, his face was red and pale. It was as if he had lost everything in despair. Yu Xiaoyan saw that her eyelashes were wet. Under her dark eyelashes, her round eyes were filled with hatred and despair. If it was someone else, they might really be threatened by her. Yu Xiaoyan thought indifferently, but the fingers that were strangling her throat loosened a little. She struggled fiercely and pinched him too tightly. She was worried that he would kill her. Finally, Wei Wei Bai leaned against him weakly and bit him like a little beast. Her voice trembled as she said, I want to kill you. Why can't I kill you? Yu Xiaoyan's fingers that were imprisoning her paused. He was silent for a long time before he pinched her cheeks, as if he had accepted his fate. This kiss came suddenly. It also ended in a hurry. His eyes were extremely calm, and his voice was abnormally calm. Okay, I accept the threat. Let her go. Wei Wei Bai's movements froze. Yu Xiaoyan hugged her tightly, and the redness on his face deepened. His face was pressed against her hair, and the helplessness on his face was even more obvious. You like this, but you didn't tell me before. Address of the full text. https://www. Sashu. Com download address of the full text. https://www. Sashu. Com read on. Com. Chapter 2686. Wei Wei Bai seemed to not dare to believe that he would say such a thing. Her nails that were clasping his skin loosened slightly, and blood flowed out from under his skin. Yu Xiaoyan was like a gentle teacher, guiding her step by step. Don't be soft-hearted next time, and don't be reckless. Otherwise, you won't be able to snatch anything. Aren't you afraid that if you fail, I'll strangle you directly? For a moment just now, he really wanted to kill her. If it wasn't for the fact that she was so pitiful, he really wanted to be ruthless. Wei Wei Bai's tone was a little shaky. I succeeded. Tell those bodyguards to get lost. It's just you and me here. You have to listen to me in the future, or your people will all die." This was a threatening tone, and it was still pitiful. Yu Xiaoyan was sure that she didn't do it on purpose. Maybe it was because of her natural temperament. Some people looked pitiful even if they bared their fangs and brandished their claws. Yu Xiaoyan's breathing was still heavy. He endured it and said without much sincerity, "Okay, just the two of us. You can enslave me however you want. But how can I be sure that you won't kill anyone?" Wei Wei Bai's nails pierced into the back of Yu Xiaoyan's hand again. "There's nothing to be sure about. You have to listen to me," she said fiercely. The back of Yu Xiaoyan's hand trembled, and his eyes darkened. He licked his lips expressionlessly. The smell of blood made him exceptionally excited, but he still endured it. He endured until the veins on the back of his hand were about to reveal his madness. Yu Xiaoyan smiled, and his smile was a little twisted and lazy. "Okay, I'll listen to you." His tone was too casual, as if he was talking to a child. Wei Wei Bai heaved a sigh of relief. She pried his arm away with all her might and stood up. "Then before tomorrow, I want the information of all your businesses and the transfer agreement. Your people have to get lost. Spit out everything in the Bai family, Yu Xiaoyan." Wei Wei Bai raised her head high, her eyes cold. Her aura was incomparably strong. If she wasn't naked and just wearing his clothes, Yu Xiaoyan would take her oath more seriously. Yu Xiaoyan leaned against the table. He was in a sorry state. He tilted his head weakly to look at her. Under his messy hair, his pair of affectionate and gentle eyes were filled with treacherous danger. His breathing was messy and heavy. "All right, I'll give it all to you." He said it too casually. Wei Wei Bai stared at him strangely. Yu Xiaoyan innocently tugged at the corner of his lips. "Why? Do you need a slave like me to serve you?" Wei Wei Bai kicked him hard. "You're such a smooth talker. You can't treat me as a pet anymore. Hurry up and do as I say." Then, she turned around and walked toward the bathroom. Her footsteps were unsteady. The imposing manner that he forced out was all fake. He was still a child, an evil child. Yu Xiaoyan reached out and touched the bloodstains that had been scratched out by his fingernails. His breath was extremely hot. "What kind of medicine did you use?" There was a smile on his face as he complained helplessly. After all, his body had undergone drug resistance training. Ordinary drugs would not be able to harm him. He didn't know who gave it to him. With Wei Wei Bai's personality, she could endure for so many years and want to get the Bai family. There was probably someone guiding her behind the scenes. Otherwise, these special drugs would have been used by so many people. With her casual and reckless behavior, how could she have done it alone? "Who is it?" Yu Xiaoyan expressionlessly reached out to support himself on the table and walked step by step towards the bathroom. No matter who it was, he would find out and scratch them. He admitted that he was jealous. He thought that there might be someone guiding her behind the scenes, and that she listened to everything. He even had the heart to kill someone. Yu Xiaoyan forced himself to support his body and reached out to push open the bathroom door. Wei Wei Bai's long hair was messy. She lowered her head and was washing her face when she was shocked by him. Yu Xiaoyan reached out and pulled open the collar of his shirt. He was still so calm and easygoing. "Wei Wei, or master?" His slender fingertips slid across his Adam's apple, which was covered in sweat from the heat. "By Wei Wei." At the / crossover system, Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www. Sashu. Download Transmigration system. Adonis, come here and read this on your phone. https://m. Sashu. To facilitate your next reading, you can click onto the quick comma. Chapter 2687. This was the first time she saw someone rushing to be a slave. Wei Wei Bai expressed that the service was waived. As long as the mission was completed, she would be able to leave with her hands and feet intact. She looked bitterly at the small mission at hand. The foot washing water had been completed earlier, exposing her identity, exposing her wolf's ambition, and not loving Yu Xiaoyan. These 3 small missions were completed at the same time. There were about 8 missions left. One was that she had to control part of the Bai family's power within 3 months and make Yu Xiaoyun's transformation fail. This mission was the biggest. The other 7 one, what the hell was she asking him to feed her? Did she really have to keep a slave just to serve her tea? 2. Ask him to massage her shoulders. 3. Take the opportunity to whip him. 4. Say that he was a dog and that he would be her dog for life. 5. Ask him to work for her. What kind of work? Does helping her bathe count? 6. Ask him to be her chair. The last one was to make Yu Xiaoyun admit that she was better than him. At the end of the side mission, there was a suggestion on the list. All missions are to make the host strive to be the master, get rid of the inherent image of a little white flower, and let the male lead know who is the master. Wei Weibai said that she deleted all the suggestions and added 100 curses from friendly countries. After staying in the bathroom for too long, her skin was wrinkled. She walked out in her tight-fitting pajamas with a bitter look on her face. Sure enough, she saw Yu Xiaoyun, who had been kicked out of the bathroom, sitting cross-legged on the bed with a document between his legs. There were messy folders around the bed. She had just taken them out of the safe in the study. The man lowered his head and looked at them seriously. The beautiful lines of his face were exceptionally clear and beautiful, like the kind of man in all women's first love dreams. Even if he was about to be 30, his face was still so delicate and flawless. Bai Weiwei helplessly rubbed her face. She was sure that she wanted to whip this kind of man, make him her chair, dog, make him her cow, horse, slave, servant. Just thinking about it made her a little excited. What was going on? She couldn't be hypnotized by the little watch. Pretending to be pitiful and lying down to win was a beautiful strategy. Once she took the route of the female lead, she would be as tired as a dog. Yu Xiaoyun had already asked the bodyguards to leave. In this big, empty house, only Yu Xiaoyun and her were left. He wondered when she would contact her accomplice. After all, it was not a good idea to imprison someone like him without having more of their own people to watch over him. Yu Xiaoyun looked up absent-mindedly and saw Wei Weibai standing by the bed. Her pitiful and hateful face was damp from her shower and tender. He pursed his lips, but the strange heat in his body did not leave. However, because the flowers had been cleaned up, the fragrance of the flowers had also disappeared. His condition did not continue to be serious, and his intense desires had also faded a little. His fingers pinched the document, and he slowly exhaled a warm breath. Everything you want is here, but some of the documents are not at home. It will take some time to transfer the property. It wasn't something that could be done with just a signature. For some of them, it was useless even if he was the only one signing. They required the signatures of many people, and they could only be successfully transferred through various means. There were many things going on inside. Yu Xiaoyun felt that she wouldn't be able to handle it. Looking at the innocent and helpless Wei Weibai, he really felt that his thoughts were laughable. At this time, he was still worried about whether she could handle it or not. Yu Xiaoyun felt that he was ridiculous. The property that he had accumulated for more than 10 years, and a group of elites who had been won over by him to their deaths. Fast the download address is at https://www.sashu.com fast the fast comma. Chapter 2688. These were all his foundation. However, he only wanted to find out who was behind her and see who her confidant, counselor, and even commander was. For the first time, Yu Xiaoyun felt darkness rolling in his heart. It was all absurd jealousy that was smaller than the eye of a needle. Wei Weibai glanced at him coldly. Oh, I know. Why aren't you signing? Yu Xiaoyun wanted to teach her a few words, but he was stopped. However, he saw that Wei Weibai's hand, which was hidden behind her, seemed to be trembling. Yu Xiaoyun lowered his eyes and signed without hesitation with the pen in his hand. The flamboyant name was so smooth that there was no trace of hesitation. It was as if these industries weren't his. Then, he handed the document to Wei Weibai. Take a look. Wei Weibai took it and didn't wait to look. Yu Xiaoyun's attitude was natural and calm as he went to get the other documents and continued to sign. Wei Weibai almost suspected that Yu Xiaoyun was possessed. His favorability was not low. His attitude didn't seem to hate her. There wasn't a trace of anger from being robbed of power. This wasn't a reaction that a normal person would have. Even a pervert wouldn't have such a reaction. Or was he a vegetarian who had eaten for a long time and had a Buddhist heart? She held the document and watched as the progress of the small task of seizing power in 3 months jumped crazily. In the end, Yu Xiaoyan calmly closed the lid of the pen and stuffed a stack of documents into her hands. Take a look at it so that I won't lie to you. Wei Wei Bai held the heavy document and saw that the small task had jumped to 80%. Although she didn't get all the industries, the part of Yu Xiaoyan's signature was enough for her to turn the tides. Therefore, the small task showed that she had succeeded in seizing power. The remaining 20% of the progress would take 3 months. As long as the power of the industries in her hands wasn't taken away within 3 months, she would have completed the biggest and most difficult task on the list. The rest of the tasks were trivial matters like whipping a whip and pouring tea for him. Wei Wei Bai held the document and turned to leave. Yu Xiaoyan looked up at her back as she walked with difficulty. The heat in the man's eyes was still there. He tugged at his collar. The heat was unbearable. She was responsible for drugging him with this dirty trick. But he was not responsible for giving him the antidote. Could it be that he wasn't even a man in her eyes? Therefore, she had no intention of helping him at all. Or was he so disgusted that he didn't even give him a woman as a reward for seizing power? Yu Xiaoyan thought of this method. He was so disgusted that his stomach started to churn. He didn't force himself to guess Wei Wei Bai's thoughts. After all, she really wanted to get him another woman. He would probably hate her to death. Thinking of this, Yu Xiaoyan got up and went to the bathroom to take a cold shower. At least today, he couldn't bear to touch her. After all, he was impulsive when he was angry. With her small body, which had not been healthy for a long time, if he couldn't hold her down, he would destroy her body. When Yu Xiaoyan was pouring water on her, he suddenly felt that he really spoiled her too much. He spoiled her into an ingrate and even gave her all kinds of excuses. He just didn't know how long he could tolerate her this time. Perhaps one day, he couldn't bear it anymore and would tear her apart like he tore apart the Bai family. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 65. Yu Xiaoyan's favorability dropped. Wei Wei Bai was not surprised. She stuffed the document into the system's hands to determine the amount of the industry and the parts that could be used. The favorability had only dropped now. Yu Xiaoyan's emotions were slow enough. Only then did he feel the pain and anger of betrayal. Read the full article at https://www.sashu.com. Read the ad. https://m.sashu.com. Chapter 2689. Wei Wei Bai had analyzed people like Yu Xiaoyan. They were good at enduring and were very scheming. As a result, his reaction to any betrayal or setback would be particularly slow, because to him, anger and disgust were not as good as calmness. Therefore, as long as she controlled the degree of courting death, after solving the side quest within 3 months, this man's favorability should still be quite high. After all, if he really hated her, it would take a while for him to slowly hate her. His favorability would not fall too badly. Wei Wei Bai expressed that everything was under reasonable speculation. She pretended that she had hidden the documents and entered the room again. Because she wanted Yu Xiaoyan to be a slave, she wanted him to be mentally prepared. She threw a quilt on the ground. From today onwards, you will lie on the ground and sleep. Don't forget your identity. The Bai family provides you with food and drink. You don't go to school to be above others, but to serve others. Yu Xiaoyan, who had just come out of the bathroom, had a head full of wet hair. His eyelashes had water droplets. When he heard this, he trembled and the water stains fell from the corner of his eyes to his chin. Yu Xiaoyan felt that he shouldn't have taken cold water. He raised his head. His gentle eyes carried a hint of coldness. Okay, it was such a simple sentence, but she could see that he was about to explode with coldness. Wei Wei Bai kicked the quilt. Go to sleep. Yu Xiaoyan, she was taking advantage of him. He stared at her for a while and saw that she was still glaring at him with bared fangs and brandished claws. It was as if she wanted to compare the size of his eyes. Seriously, she was much cuter when she was mentally retarded. But now, she was actually cute. It was just infuriating. Yu Xiaoyun threw the quilt expressionlessly. Then, he hugged the quilt and lay on the carpet. He covered his head with the quilt and ignored her. Tonight, his tolerance for her had reached its limit. If she continued to disturb him, he would really be angry. Wei Wei Bai saw that Yu Xiaoyun covered his head and deliberately fell asleep with his back facing her. His entire body language exuded the aura of being angry, but I won't say it. Wei Wei Bai looked exhausted. She reached out and rubbed the bridge of her nose. She was also suffering. She tossed and turned. She made a fuss and made a fuss. Who was willing? She was also a victim. Wei Wei Bai lay down and stared at the ceiling. She was thinking about how to cut the branch into 8 pieces. He finally managed to endure for half an hour. She asked the system, "Is he asleep?" The system replied, "No." Wei Wei Bai, that's good. She was afraid that she would lose all her favorability points, so it was better for her to work hard to increase her favorability points by 1 or 2 points outside of the side quest. Yu Xiaoyun did not fall asleep. Instead, he resisted the urge to go to bed and bully her. He closed his eyes and breathed steadily. However, his muscles were a little stiff. Suddenly, he heard Wei Wei Bai getting off the bed. Was she going out to find someone? Yu Xiaoyun opened his eyes, which were clear and bright. However, Yu Xiaoyun felt it. She reached out and gently stroked his hair. Her slender and slightly cold fingertips ran through his black hair that had fallen outside the blanket. That little bit of coolness, the feeling of touching his scalp, was numb but also warm. Yu Xiaoyun did not move and let her do as she pleased. This gentle action lasted for a few minutes. When he moved, the girl behind him was like a frightened little animal. Her fingers quickly moved away. Yu Xiaoyun did not move again, as if he was really asleep. Wei Wei Bai let out a sigh of relief. She carefully left him and muttered in dissatisfaction, "There will be a day when you will fall into my hands. Don't even think about running away next time." This sentence was said in an unusually childish manner. There was no mature sense of threat at all. After a long time, Yu Xiaoyun sat up straight. He stared at Wei Wei Bai, who was sleeping under the blanket with an expressionless face. He stared for a long time. Then he lay back down expressionlessly. Don't even think about running away. Those who did not know would think that she loved him so much that she wanted to imprison him. Yu Xiaoyun could not help but curve his lips. The coldness that spread throughout his body dissipated. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 70. Chapter 2690. When Yu Xiaoyun woke up, his eyes were extremely drowsy, but in the blink of an eye, he immediately woke up. He sat up with a head full of hair. Then, in the blink of an eye, he saw Wei Wei Bai pouting and sleeping like a little pig. It was only 6 o'clock. Yu Xiaoyun had always woken up early because of his biological clock. Even if he didn't sleep much last night, he would still wake up at this time, as usual. However, Wei Wei Bai couldn't do anything about it. She was used to being lazy. She went to bed early and woke up late. During this period of time, she had been spoiled by him until she was delicate and lazy. Not to mention the eldest miss. She was his little ancestor. The servants were rougher than her and chased away with a knife, not leaving many who could be used. There should have been servants waiting outside the door to serve them. In the end, when he woke up, he was faced with the empty love garden and the entire Bai family mansion that had changed its surname. This delicate little ancestor probably didn't know that if there was no one in such a spacious place, in less than a month, it would become a ghost town. Places where no one lived deteriorated very quickly. Moreover, no one was guarding 3 meals a day in the morning and at night. That was a lot of trouble. Even the leaves outside had fallen. If they were not swept for a day, the road in the courtyard would soon disappear. A bunch of questions flashed through Yu Xiaoyun's mind. He suddenly reached out and grabbed his hair in frustration. He was really sick. He wasn't thinking about his career now. He was thinking about where his subordinates were hidden and whether any of them had died. There was also the consequences of the failed transformation of the Hainan Airlines project. He He was thinking about what would happen if she woke up with no food to eat, no flowers to reward, and no one to serve her. Yu Xiaoyan felt that he really loved her to the bone. It was simply forget it. Yu Xiaoyan got up barefoot and walked to the bedside. He reached out and touched her long hair. Her fingertips were a little cold. Her skin was also a little cold. The blanket was too thin, and she forgot to turn on the air conditioner last night. After all, it was already the end of summer. It was almost the beginning of autumn. She wouldn't worry about her body. She might not even know how to put on clothes when she was cold. She had developed a vicious and ingrate personality. Her brain was still that of a few years old. Yu Xiaoyan saw that there were drool marks on her pink face. In the end, he heaved a heavy sigh and decided to forget it. If he was led astray, then he would teach him well. It wasn't as if they hadn't experienced setbacks before, so the maritime aviation project was suspended first. She would first grind her temper while he still liked her. What if he didn't like her in the future? He might kill her, and then she wouldn't be able to learn even if she wanted to. Yu Xiaoyan thought coldly and warmly. Bai Weiwei felt that as she slept, she felt like a hungry wolf was staring at her. She silently shrank back. It must be that hungry wolf, Yu Xiaoyan. Let him glare at her. She wouldn't hand her over to him without at least 3 months. He woke up naturally. Weiwei Bai crawled out of the quilt with messy hair and found that her quilt was much thicker. Because there was an extra blanket, it was Yu Xiaoyan who slept on the floor last night. She scratched her head speechlessly and then rubbed her stomach. She was hungry. The servants were all chased away. There was no other way. If he didn't chase him away, how could he make Yu Xiaoyan work? With Yu Xiaoyan's noble appearance, it was impossible to provoke him at all. The people around him would automatically serve him. He was this kind of person. Even the chopsticks and bowls had to be placed properly for him to eat. He probably wouldn't touch rice, oil, and salt in his life. She had already planned to chase the servants away. Then she would force Yu Xiaoyan to do work. She would let him do things like serving tea and feeding when there were no servants around. // Chapter 2691. This way, she could complete a mission. Then, using the excuse that he didn't do a good job, she could find an excuse to whip him. This way, she could complete another mission. She guessed that he was angry at that time and glared at her. She angrily called him a dog and a dog for life. Okay, another mission was completed. As for work, the little whore said that it was work, so she put this aside first. Being a chair and saying that she was awesome. She hadn't thought about this yet. Weiwei Bai applauded herself expressionlessly. Oh, she was still very awesome. She had just woken up, and she had already solved more than half of the side missions. If the side missions wanted to defeat her, it would take 10,000 years of effort. Weiwei Bai had just finished applauding when she saw a slender figure enter the door. A beautiful shadow was pulled in from the morning light. Yu Xiaoyan walked in with a plate of food. There were a few side dishes and porridge on it. He had already tidied himself up. He was wearing a set of silk clothes and cloth shoes, looking very refreshed. Seeing that Bai Weiwei still hadn't woken up, he said very indifferently, "Go wash up, then eat." Before Weiwei Bai could flare up and ask him to cook, he had already finished automatically. Weiwei Bai's mouth twitched. Did this count as completing the side mission? After thinking about it, Weiwei Bai still said indifferently to be on the safe side. Yes, well done. Prepare like this in the future. Yu Xiaoyan, who had just put down the plate of food and was filling the porridge, paused. Then, he looked up with gentle eyes and a faint smile. Okay, as long as you like it. Weiwei Bai felt that this strange look was very compatible with his resentment of being betrayed. So, she went to wash up happily. Yu Xiaoyan saw her heartless look and couldn't tell that she could endure for so long, just to betray him. If she could be 100% vicious and not give him any reason to be sentimental, he wouldn't be so conflicted about her. Weiwei Bai washed up and saw that Yu Xiaoyan was already eating porridge by himself. He didn't wait for her at all. He used to wait for her to eat with him. Weiwei Bai didn't care about this at all, but she couldn't lose the main storyline for the sake of a side quest. So she stood there, rubbed her eyes, and stared blankly at Yu Xiaoyan, who was eating porridge. Yu Xiaoyan originally wanted to eat first, and then contact a few of his subordinates who were not affected by the bomb. However, he felt a resentful gaze land on him. He stared blankly for a moment before turning to look at her. He saw Wei Wei by standing not too far away. Her hands were tugging at her clothes, and her long hair was draped over her shoulders. She looked like an immature child. Both of her eyes were red. He seemed to have been greatly wronged. She seemed to be reprimanding him for eating first and not calling her. For a moment, the porridge in Yu Xiaoyun's mouth became even more tasteless. After a moment of silence, he helplessly put down his chopsticks and said, "Why aren't you eating yet?" When Wei Wei Bai heard this, she immediately ran over and sat opposite him. Just as she was about to pick up the bowl, she thought of something and slammed the bowl on the table. "Why are they all vegetarian? Are you deliberately trying to starve me to death, Yu Xiaoyun?" Yu Xiaoyun had just picked up his chopsticks when he heard this. He paused for a moment before looking up. His gaze was cold and indifferent. That little bit of gentleness had already disappeared. It was so cold that it made one's back go numb. Wei Wei Bai was about to take a whip to whip him when she saw how cold his gaze was. She suddenly felt that if she whipped him, she would probably lose 50 favorability points. She thought about the favorability points she had gained by pretending to be mentally retarded. Full text // download. Chapter 2692. She was still a little reluctant. She immediately picked up the bowl, obediently picked up the spoon, and buried her head in the porridge. Don't forget that I want to eat meat in the future. You won't live a short life if you eat vegetarian every day. The girl's muttering voice was unusually cute, and there was nothing to be angry about even when she said harsh words. The coldness in Yu Xiaoyun's eyes slowly disappeared. He stared at her with her head lowered for a long time before slowly continuing to eat the porridge. After eating, Yu Xiaoyun very calmly cleaned up the dishes. Wei Wei Bai, this was too automatic. There was no room for him to do anything. He couldn't whip her when she went to wash the dishes. This would definitely decrease her favorability. Although Yu Xiaoyun lived like a prince, he still had some skills when it came to doing things. Housework was not a technical job. It was just a matter of whether one did it or not. For Yu Xiaoyun, it didn't matter whether he could do it well or not. He roughly knew why she had chased away all the servants. At first, he thought it was because she felt that the servants were his people. Now, it was clear that she just wanted him to be a servant. She just wanted to humiliate him. Yu Xiaoyun finished washing the dishes and took a clean cotton cloth to wipe his hands unhurriedly. Why did she want to humiliate him? Did she really think that he was an enemy and that she hated him for stealing her by family? Yu Xiaoyun looked up at Love Garden casually and smiled coldly. Shouldn't she hate this place even more than he did? After all, everyone here bullied her, including her who turned a blind eye to her miserable state. Wei Wei Bai held a toy-like whip and bargained with a side quest. Side quest, such a small whip is tickling me. Wei Wei Bai, you'll be happy if you kill the target? Anyway, you said a whip, but you didn't specify the size of the whip. This is it. It didn't hurt at all. In fact, it felt especially good. The favorability probably wouldn't decrease by much. Side quest. Wei Wei Bai. Damn you. Can't you let me complete the side quest? Don't be such a jerk. If you continue like this, I'll quit. After I'm disfigured, I'll stick to you every day and make you take responsibility for the rest of my life. Side quest. This threat was too terrifying, and it made the branch system cower. After Yu Xiaoyun finished wiping his hands, he walked in and saw Wei Wei Bai sitting on a chair. The girl held a small whip in her hand. It was small and thin like a toy. He had no idea where it came from. She seemed to have just noticed his arrival and immediately stuffed the whip into her sleeve. Yu Xiaoyun didn't say much, but his eyes darkened, and then he revealed a smile. All right, let's go. Wei Wei Bai looked at him blankly. Where are we going? Yu Xiaoyun walked in front of her. The handsome and mature man held her hand elegantly and naturally. When he lowered his eyes, the corners of his eyes were gentle and beautiful. Didn't you want all my assets? I signed my name last night, so I have to hold a meeting today to announce it. Moreover, you've just taken office, so you need to adjust the personnel and appease the people. For Wei Wei Bai, she wasn't a novice when it came to these things. After all, managing a company was her strength. However, the side mission was to let her be the head of the household and be a strong female CEO. Wei Wei Bai expressed that she wouldn't give what the side mission wanted. Therefore, the confusion in her eyes was even more obvious. She was so confused that she seemed to have become mentally retarded again. When Yu Xiaoyan saw her like this, the cold thoughts in his heart faded away. He smiled sympathetically. There are many assets. You will be a little busy, my master. The last word master was uttered affectionately, and it was indescribably numbing to the bone. Compared to being a servant, he looked more like a boy toy. Chapter 2693. Wei Wei Bai had no choice but to follow him to the meeting. Recently, Yu Xiaoyan's company was in a mess. The bomb incident was extremely chaotic, and the key elite leadership group had gone missing. The transformation of the maritime project was also completely stopped. All parties were waiting to see how Yu Xiaoyan's situation was, which led to many project collaborations being stopped. When there were a few elders in the middle who were not affected by the bomb, they were notified for a meeting. Everyone immediately gathered. After all, this was the first meeting after the incident. They all wanted to eat a reassuring pill. Then, Wei Wei Bai saw a bunch of aunties from the market. The elites and employees of Yu Xiaoyan's department were all transferred from the underworld. Originally, there were also civil servants who were recruited, but once they entered this place, they became loud voices after a long time. During the meeting, everyone was shouting, and they were just short of fighting. Yu's son of AB*TCH, who adjusted the salary of the third department by 10%. Who doesn't know that the third department's performance in the past 6 months is the worst? Fuck, General Manager Chun. Where's Secretary Zhang? Where did he go? Didn't he get blown up? If he's really dead, why didn't he send a message or send a wreath? Who's that in the seat? Young Master Yu's woman? Why is she sitting here? Wei Wei Bai sat there in a daze. Yu Xiaoyan put her here and said that he wanted her to announce it herself. She opened her mouth. Child, where's your man? He's our leader. You're courting death, sitting there. Don't be arrogant. If young Master Yu sees you, you won't have a good life. Wei Wei Bai slammed the table and was about to shout, I'm your leader. Everyone hurriedly slammed the table. Fuck, is there anyone in charge of this company? Where's young Master Yu? Where's Manager Chun? The voice roared and completely drowned out Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai, Yu Xiaoyan did it on purpose. He must have done it on purpose. Yu Xiaoyan went home early. He was drinking tea when he heard the sound of running footsteps outside the door. The next moment, he heard Wei Wei Bai's angry voice. Yu Xiaoyan, you're doing this on purpose. Your people don't listen to me at all. Yu Xiaoyan took a sip of tea and remained calm. He said indifferently, Oh, is that so? As expected, the young lady who had rushed in was clenching her fists tightly. Her face was flushed, and her eyes were as bright as a cat's. I want to fire them. These are all your people. Yu Xiaoyan didn't have any reaction. His thin lips were moistened by the tea and were exceptionally red. Wei Wei Bai slammed her hands on the table angrily. I'm going to chase all of you men away. You better write me a notice. Yu Xiaoyan finally looked up. Are you sure? Wei Wei Bai fiercely nodded and said angrily, Yes, I'm sure. Yu Xiaoyan put down the teacup and slowly got up. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed her arm, pulling it behind her back. Wei Wei Bai only felt dizzy as she was heavily pressed onto the table by Yu Xiaoyan. Teacups and everything else fell to the ground. The floor was a mess. Bai Weiwei was frightened and her whole body stiffened. She wanted to struggle, but found that her physical strength was too different from this man's. The man who was usually elegant and beautiful was as cold as a poisonous snake at this moment. I've given you everything you want. You can't handle it, but you still want me to handle it. His voice was indifferent. You're like a willful child who was bullied and rushed home to complain to the adults. You hate me, betray me, but rely on me so much. At this point, he stared at her sparkling eyes that were about to burst into tears. He whispered, Do you really hate me, or do you love me? / Chapter 2694. Wei Wei Bai's pupils constricted, as if she was frightened. As if her thoughts were exposed, she opened her eyes fiercely and gritted her teeth, wanting to say something harsh. However, she found that her throat was blocked. She looked at him in surprise, worried that he would see through her thoughts. Yu Xiaoyun touched her frightened eyes with his fingertips. Do you love me? Is that why you hate me so much? Do you hate that I never had you in my eyes and let you be bullied by others? Or do you hate that I love you but lock you up? Wei Wei Bai shouted, No, I don't. She looked like she was desperately refuting his words. Yu Xiaoyun was stunned, and his heart trembled. He was just guessing, but he didn't expect to guess correctly. Wei Wei Bai was still retorting. Who loves you? You're just a dog in the Bai family. You'll always be a dog. I won't love you. If these words were usually said, it would be heartbreaking. But now, in her mouth, it became a shield for her anger and her unwillingness to admit her love. Yu Xiaoyun silently let her hit his chest, but he didn't feel any pain. After all, compared to when she betrayed him in the beginning, his heart was hurt by her indifference. This point was casually scolded by her, and it couldn't be taken as an attack at all. It really didn't matter. Yu Xiaoyun said gently, Okay, you don't love me. He looked like he didn't want to argue with a child. Then, he lowered his head and kissed her again. It was a gentle and soft kiss, and a nostalgia in his heart for her appeared again. Wei Wei Bai wanted to refuse, but the man coaxed softly. I'll give you a notice and let you fire me, okay? She was stunned. Yu Xiaoyun was a little amused at her cautious look, and then pinched her chin. You've lost weight. She wanted to shoulder the burden and be a strong woman. She also wanted to be his master. There were so many things that were difficult to control that she had to control. How could it be as comfortable as being in his arms? She would definitely lose some flesh. Yu Xiaoyun touched her cheek. Her soft skin made him squint his eyes. Bai Weiwei under him didn't resist at all. It was as if Yu Xiaoyun was her master and not a slave in her hands. Weiwei Bai only let go of her when she was done pinching and rubbing against her. Then, he held her hand and helped her tidy up her clothes before leading her out. His so-called announcement was just a simple meeting in the company's meeting room. He gathered all the people who could talk. Those loud voices came again. Yu Xiaoyun was a gentle and calm person, noble and elegant. But everyone knew that the group of people he used were abnormally rough and unpresentable. At first, all his enemies were laughing at him. What happened later proved that he was right. This was because this group of people were famous for their loyalty. They were not afraid of death and did not care about short-term gains and losses. They did not haggle over every ounce. It was always Yu Xiaoyun who agreed to whatever he said. Moreover, after the guidance of the teachers hired by Yu Xiaoyun, they were already the backbone of the company. Yu Xiaoyun wanted obedient people, and these people only listened to him. Wei Wei Bai took his signed transfer of assets. The real estate was easier to deal with. The most difficult was the company and the various big projects. Fortunately, the Bai family's previous dark businesses had been castrated by him. Otherwise, how could Wei Wei Bai, such a delicate and impatient child, face those businesses? Yu Xiaoyun sat on the chair. Wei Wei Bai lay on the table with a dissatisfied expression. Just like before, when he came to the meeting, she accompanied him. But this time, she sat in the main seat, and Yu Xiaoyun sat in the second seat. Slack. Chapter 2695. He had a calm expression on his face as he flipped through the equity transfer agreement unhurriedly. The employees who had shouted at Wei Wei Bai just now were now shrinking into their shells like cowards, not daring to say anything. The scene was unusually quiet. It was strange. It was even heavy. Anyway, every time, young master, you came, these old and boorish people would become little wives, not daring to say a word. In the future, you will listen to her, understand? Yu Xiaoyun's voice was very calm, like a gentle scholar, indescribably elegant and gentle. After he finished speaking, some people couldn't stand it anymore and were about to question him. However, they heard Yu Xiaoyun repeat again, understand? These two words were calm and indifferent. However, it made it impossible for people to protest. Everyone knew that Yu Xiaoyan was not used to repeating a sentence. Once he was asked to repeat it, then it was an extremely important order that had to be obeyed. Yu Xiaoyan looked at everyone calmly. The company, I've already signed the equity transfer agreement for all the properties that I can use now. The lawyer will come and notarize the property transfer agreement later. You guys can also be witnesses. After saying that, he glanced at Wei Wei by beside him indifferently. However, he saw her staring at him with her eyes full of doubt and vigilance. She seemed to think that he agreed too easily. Yu Xiaoyan smiled indifferently and then spread out the documents. In the future, the properties under this company will also belong to Wei Wei. She has the power to kill all of you. His words were unusually calm. He didn't care if the people present could bear it or not. Those who could attend the meeting in the conference room were the remaining elites. Now, these elites were shocked. They looked at Wei Wei Bai in disbelief as if they had eaten shit. Suddenly, one of them protested. Mr. Yu, this is against the rules. Even if you like her, you can't give such a big company to her. Abandoning his career for a woman. No one could imagine that Yu Xiaoyan was the one who did it. In the past, they couldn't wait for him to find a woman to control him so that he wouldn't become a vegetarian. In the end, a woman came, and this master was going to abandon his career again. Couldn't he torment them less and give them some peace and quiet? Yu Xiaoyan repeated in a whisper, "Do you like it?" That's right. He liked her so much that he was willing to indulge her. Yu Xiaoyan put down the pen and crossed his arms as if it had nothing to do with him. All right, don't tell me anything. I won't be your boss from now on. He was serious. Everyone looked at each other, their faces twitching as they looked at Wei Wei Bai, who was sitting in the middle. The young girl's face was pink and tender. She had just reached adulthood and was exceptionally cute. She was so cute that it made people want to punch her until she cried. She would definitely look good. Finally, a department manager who wore glasses and looked like a well-dressed beast stood up. He was a civil servant and looked like a department manager. Miss Bai, may I know what we should do when the person in charge of the Hainan Airlines project comes over to discuss the follow-up matters with us? The sea voyage was halted. This was a huge loss to Yu Xiaoyan. It was also a loss for those who had just signed the contract and saw that the project was going to fail. So in the past few days, many collaborators had come to ask for an explanation. Another department immediately stood up and said, "It's not just the sea voyage project. We have also invested a huge amount of money in the Green Flower project that has just been launched. If we stop now, the group will suffer unimaginable losses. We might even go bankrupt." Chapter 2696. This topic came up. Everyone was noisy. Who didn't have a decent project in their department? They were facing a transition period, a bonus period, and a period of consolidation of industries after obtaining great power. If they didn't have a leader to properly organize and lead them, the power and funds in their hands would disappear. They might even close down due to poor management. That department didn't want to become the sinner that caused the company to close down. All kinds of documents, all kinds of accountability, and all kinds of requests came. Wei Wei Bai's front was suddenly filled with problematic documents. Her snow-white little face was about to be drowned in these folders. Yu Xiaoyan was drinking tea. The secretary had brought it up. It was a high-quality green tea. He instructed the people around him in a low voice, "Just serve Miss Juice. She hasn't been eating much recently and has a bad appetite. She can't drink too much tea." Finally, it was time for the juice. Only then did Yu Xiaoyan look up at her. This table full of things was also a show of strength to Wei Wei Bai. Sure enough, he saw her looking at a pile of clueless work with a dazed expression. Yu Xiaoyan saw that the corners of her eyes were red, as if she didn't know what to do. He quietly curled the corners of his mouth, then placed the juice by her hand. He also quietly drank his tea, having no intention of helping at all. They were still making a ruckus. Everyone was rushing to let Wei Wei Bai make the decision. Wei Wei Bai sometimes wanted to open her mouth to say something, but she realized that no one was listening to her because everyone's voice was louder than hers. Yu Xiaoyan's gaze quietly fell on her helpless little expression, and then his gaze also fell on her neck. She was still wearing a cheongsam with light floral patterns today. Under the fragmented flowers was the beautiful outline of a young girl's body. Her wrists that were exposed to the sleeves were more attractive and fair than a washed lotus root. Her extremely beautiful calves were faintly discernible at the slit of the Chong Sam. Finally, those calves moved. Wei Wei Bai stood up, turned around, and sat on Yu Xiaoyan's lap. Yu Xiaoyan almost spilled the tea in his hand. Wei Wei Bai hugged Yu Xiaoyan's neck with both hands, bit his ear, and said discontentedly, "You're making fun of me." Yu Xiaoyan blinked his eyes. He was a little dazed. He carefully held the teacup and felt a warmth on his thigh. It was the warmth and softness of a young girl. He shook his head gently. "Am I not giving you a chance to make a decision? Now, these industries are yours, the company is yours, and the employees should also be managed by you, lest you say that I'm depriving you of your rights." The old fox's words were impeccable. Wei Wei Bai couldn't think of a rebuttal for a moment. Suddenly, she found that the surroundings were quiet. The employees stared at the two of them. Because Wei Wei Bai sat directly on Yu Xiaoyan's lap. It was rare to see Yu Xiaoyan, a vegetarian, carrying a woman so casually. Everyone knew that young master Yu had a woman. However, he was too immortal and too clean, causing many people to think that his woman was drinking tea with him. In the end, they saw something. Yu Xiaoyan's fingers were already clasping Wei Wei Bai's waist, and his fingertips were quietly caressing the softness on the side of her waist. This action was very flirtatious. Wei Wei Bai looked up and glared fiercely. Many people calmly lowered their heads and pretended not to see. Yu Xiaoyan smiled. "What's wrong? Let's deal with the matter first." Although he said that, he didn't stop her from sitting on his lap. Wei Wei Bai suddenly hugged him and said, "You are my chair." Yu Xiaoyan glanced at her indifferently, but saw that her clear eyes were filled with cute stubbornness. Chapter 2697. She said, "I want you to be my chair, otherwise they won't be quiet." Yu Xiaoyan stared at her calmly for a few seconds. Wei Wei Bai said fiercely, "You have to listen to me. You're my chair." When she spoke, her movements were a little big, and her calf was even close to his leg. The fragrance of a young girl followed the strength of her rubbing and directly pressed against him. Yu Xiaoyan was silent for a long time before he continued to take a sip of tea to moisten his dry throat. "Yes, I'll be your chair," he whispered, his voice lingering. Wei Wei Bai sat on Yu Xiaoyan's lap, then turned to face the table, ignoring the surprised gazes of others, and started to work. The work was very messy. The various projects were also intricate and gave people a headache. Wei Wei Bai was annoyed and couldn't wait to throw away the documents. Yu Xiaoyan was not surprised at all to see that she was annoyed. He even gave her pointers from time to time, wanting her to get the hang of it quickly. She couldn't see the pain of having her business taken away from her at all. Anyway, it was enough for him to accompany her no matter what she wanted. The meeting lasted until dark, and they finally got off work. Many of the ideas were decided by Yu Xiaoyan. Wei Wei Bai even felt that there were some problems that couldn't be decided, so he had to solve them. When they returned home, Wei Wei Bai was so tired that her eyelids were dozing off. She nodded and was carried by Yu Xiaoyan. He said, "Are you happy being your chair for a day?" Wei Wei Bai lay on his back in a daze. "Yes, I'm happy." Another side mission was completed. Yu Xiaoyan walked forward, followed by the bodyguard and the driver. He didn't put her down. He would rather walk a few steps and carry the girl behind him. "If you like, you can sit every day in the future." Wei Wei Bai sneered. "Don't try to please me. I won't return those people to you. If I really give them to you, you won't be obedient." Yu Xiaoyan stopped in his tracks, but his expression was still indifferent. "Do you want me to be obedient?" Wei Wei Bai was tired and impatient. "Nonsense. If I don't ask you to be obedient, why would I touch your things? I hate you the most. Everyone scolds me, beats me, and calls me a jinx, a little monster who cursed my mother to death." Yu Xiaoyan took a deep breath and finally said, "I didn't scold you." Bai Weiwei's fingers gripped his shoulders. Her fingertips exerted some force, and her voice trembled. "But you ignored me and treated me like air. You are more hateful than anyone else. You didn't even look at me. I swear that one day I will stand in a position that you can't reach. Then I will ignore you and let you have a taste of me. Yu Xiaoyan carefully went over her words in his mind. It was a little sad, but there was also a hint of sweetness in it. So, she cared about him that much? Wei Wei Bai's voice was a little choked up. I did it. You're my servant now. Everything you have is mine. Am I better than you? You can't ignore me anymore. Yu Xiaoyan really wanted to laugh, but he felt a little uncomfortable. Her inferiority complex, crazy, forbearing, and twisted mentality was filled with many painful days. Yu Xiaoyan finally murmured in a low voice, Am I that important to you? Wei Wei Bai didn't hear clearly for a while and just scolded in a low voice. Listen to me obediently in the future. Obey me, okay? Yu Xiaoyan walked under the moonlight. The moonlight pulled their shadows together. After a long silence, she heard the man's voice. He said, okay. His voice was lazy and calm, but there was a trace of indulgence. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 75. //. Chapter 2698. Wei Wei Bai silently ticked the completion on her completion list. She poured tea and did it. She helped him with the work. She handed the documents to him and did it. Although she did it casually and didn't ask him not to move, the task list showed that it was completed. She said that he was a dog and completed it. He even treated it as a chair and completed it. Very good. She was just short of a whip and a massage. In the end, he admitted that he was better than her. All right, she was still short of feeding. Feeding, Wei Wei Bai silently looked up, held a spoon, and stared at Yu Xiaoyan, who was eating breakfast opposite her. There were no servants at home. Now, only their room was left, and the corridor was relatively clean. The 3 meals were simple. After all, Yu Xiaoyan wasn't a good cook. It was also because he was talented and had strong hands-on skills that he could cook 3 simple meals a day in the kitchen. Yu Xiaoyan was also the one who cleaned up. In the middle of the night, she asked him to pour water and bring tea or something. He could also immediately get honey water and flower tea. He could also get 2 snacks for her. She heard that he had recently baked according to the recipe and put it in the refrigerator, waiting for her to eat it when she wanted to. Yu Xiaoyan did the work of pouring tea and serving people smoothly, and it wasn't degrading at all. It was just that the garden was too big, and no one cleaned up the pool of dead flowers. It looked bleak. Yu Xiaoyan seemed to have noticed the other party's gaze. He looked up and saw Wei Wei Bai holding a bowl. The corners of her eyes were a little red, and she was staring at him softly. There seemed to be some desire in her eyes. He paused. What did she desire? However, the girl's eyelashes trembled slightly. She immediately looked away and didn't say anything. Yu Xiaoyan thought for a moment and finally picked up a crispy side dish for her on the small plate in front of her. Eat. His tone was incomparably calm. It was just a trivial matter. The corner of Wei Wei Bai's eyes twitched. Then she snorted coldly and ate the porridge vigorously, ignoring him. Yu Xiaoyan thought for a while expressionlessly. Was it not enough? So he picked up a few more dishes. In the end, the other party ignored him even more. He even sat sideways, as if he couldn't wait to show him his back. Yu Xiaoyan looked at her innocently. He didn't seem to know what he had done wrong. The meal was somewhat depressing. Because Wei Wei Bai had taken over the business, she had to attend many meetings to sort out the business. There were also follow-up meetings for the project. The Hainan Airlines project had been stopped for too long. Everyone exploded. Wei Wei Bai sat at the head of the table. Because she had lost too many key leaders, she had to do everything. They came to her for all kinds of problems, and the stacked folders were almost taller than her head. Wei Wei Bai felt that even if she didn't look at it, she could still sign from morning to night. Yu Xiaoyan, on the other hand, was rather leisurely. He ordered a pot of Hong Pao and sat on the side with a few books. He was in no hurry at all. Even when he saw that Wei Wei Bai was in a terrible fix, he still had the mood to smile. Finally, after busying herself for half a day, Wei Wei Bai realized that she had only done a little. She leaned on the table weakly. You weren't this busy before. She muttered unhappily. The girl was wearing a light purple cheongsam today, which he had prepared for her. He had even woven a dark purple crystal collar for her. Although it wasn't worth much compared to jade, it was exceptionally beautiful and pure. His gaze rested on the girl's slender waist and the delicate neck that was exposed under the collar of the cheongsam. After admiring it for a while, he said calmly, "Because someone helped me." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.